record. I'm gonna start recording. I kind of record the whole thing. I think Ryan records parts of it. You covered props, state, the spread operator, right? ES6 spread operator. You're gonna see that used all the time. React is written predominantly in what version of JavaScript? Anyone know? Different versions of JavaScript. ES5 versus ES6, right? I mean, they're up to, I think, ES10 now. So React will start incorporating or will be incorporating all versions of JavaScript. So as you go along, you're going to start seeing these newer things being introduced into the world of React. It's kind of cutting edge stuff. You know, like the way Ryan was teaching, sometimes a little slow, but getting to the point across. Cool. Deeper into React. Everything seems so good. Ideally, we can go over the labs the next day. So that was something Ryan had discussed with me, is maybe going over labs, homeworks to kind of show solutions. I always like showing solutions. You know, a little behind on the labs, catching up. So just wanted to catch up so we're all on the same page. I like to address feedback. Something like this, you know, React seems complicated. A lot of trouble finding anything defined, and I already feel like I'm a day behind. So sometimes React, I've taught React several times. This is my 7th cohort I'm teaching full-time right now in NYC. And React is the kind of thing that takes some people just a little bit to kind of get into the groove of. But when you get into the groove of it, you start to see just how intuitive React is and how it's meant to break things down into these smaller, you know, components, right? That's the key word. React is all about components, right? Keeping aware of state of the app, passing down props to child components. Once you wrap your head around those terms, you have a full understanding of that, as well as, you know, a few additional concepts, and we'll be covering those today. Something like, you know, life cycle states or life cycle methods. So a React component, as you can imagine, kind of has this pulse, right? It kind of knows what's going on. If you update state, what happens? What happens when you update state? Can anyone tell me? I mean, you've been updating state. No one want to tell me? Roderick, any idea? I know, right? I call on people, so that's why when I see you there. Roderick, what happens when you update state?
So when you update the state, you change the content, and therefore the data is rendered.
Rendered, right? All right. Yeah. Don't stress it. That's exactly it, right? Changing the state of the app causes a what? Chrissy, what does it cause? By change the state, it causes the component to what? What's the main method that React uses to return the DOM elements of whatever it has to display on the screen? What's the main method?
Render?
Yeah, render. So updating state causes a call to render again, right? So we re-render the component again, okay? So keep that in mind. Updating state, like what's happening. There's a lot going on under the hood with React that you don't see. You just call this method set state, and all of a sudden the data changes, right? I mean, something has to, behind the hood, say, hey, something changed, so I need to update or re-render, recalculate information, and do certain things. Even that ternary operator that you had used for the login last week, right? That made the distinction whether the user was logged in, is logged in versus not, right? True or false, showed certain components based on that logic. So there is this kind of pulse to React where it knows the state of its information, right? Where does state need to live in? Where do you create state? Yashira, where is state found? I had to create state right now in a component, where would it be?
I would say the parent component.
Okay. So you're saying in a component, all right, at least we broke it down to a component. Inside of that component, where is state?
The constructor.
Constructor, right? So it goes inside of the constructor. That's where you're going to find it. And most often, there's going to be times when state is truly located at this kind of global level, at the application level. Last week, though, state was located in two places, correct? Mace, where was state also located? It was located in two places for the for that login feature. Any ideas? What did the form do? Form did what? Typing away in the form.
It captured. I mean, there was a form.
Sure.
And then, so I'm not really sure.
Okay. So when the form was, I'm just going to pull up lecture notes from last week, because that's where you would have seen that the form here, right? They're creating the form. Here's the login form, right? Login. Does login have state also?
Yeah.
What was the purpose of that? What was the purpose of putting state here in the login?
The JSX file that was created, we had to put that state inside there so we can tell the app to run it.
Okay. What does this represent here? Like, state is in this particular login app, it's capturing what? What does it actually capture? What are the two properties, key value pairs?
Input data.
Yeah, right. User types in their username, user types in a password, and bloom, we've captured that. And here's, input form with a username and password, and we captured that data. And then once we captured that data, we then on some sort of change event, right? Because here's a change event which captured this information from the input. We also did something else, right? When the user submitted the form, I just went down here to submit, right? So once we added this to the form, this method ran, right? And then the method did something too, right? It passed data where? It's not doing it right there, but if we go down here to the, let me see, just gonna go to the main components. Here's the React, here's our app, right? Because we have to pass the information to app, right? Information here needs to get up to the app, to username. So what I'm trying to show you is that state lived in how many places? Where was state?
In the,
Yeah, anyway. Yeah,
in the form, in the constructor.
Sure. And what's this component?
Oh, in the class.
Right, it lived in both the app.
Oh, that's right.
And it lived in the login components. Okay. So I know, Yashira, when you mentioned that state, lives maybe in the parent component, right? I'm going to assume, parent might mean the top level component that the whole app is using, possibly. But only so if the rest of the application needs parts of that information. If information is only needed at the login component, right? Like I'm going to capture the login information as you type, I can pass that up. And then that information can be used within the app wherever that information needs to be used. So it's important to know that when we're defining where state lives, we make the distinction of, does that thing truly need to know about the information, and do other components need to know about that? If they do, it's the concept of lifting state. We lift it up. And if we lift it up, then we give it to a parent component. Okay. So I just wanted to do, just a quick review. You did do it, you did walk through the process last week. You had homework on it. There's a big difference between, doing the code along with the instructor, maybe doing the lab, trying to figure it out, doing the homework, and then having a few days where you don't touch the thing. And then when you jump back in, it's like, what does this thing do again? How would I create it? So this stuff requires constant review. The one thing I wanted to do was maybe take a look at the homework here, right? The ATM application. So let me just put here, just want to maybe put a poll out there in our classroom. Poll, ATM homework was, here we go, difficult, challenging, that's it, challenging, super hard, and couldn't do it. Here we go. I'm going to just slack out a poll. Okay. All right. I'm going to assume, like, if you couldn't do it, maybe it's, you know, time constraints and or the thing was just crazy hard, right? So I'm going to ask, was that the case? Tiffany, Travis, Quincy, do you think it was just crazy hard to do? Was that the reason why?
Yeah, I still feel like I'm kind of catching up right now.
Okay. That's cool. Tiffany, what about you?
I've been in the hospital the last 3 days, so
Oh.
I'm trying to catch up.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Tiffany. I hope you're feeling better. Okay. And if you need help, Tiffany, feel free to reach out, you know.
I should be able to catch up by tomorrow. I should be.
Okay. All right. Yeah. But use the resources that are available. Okay. And always reach out if you need any help. Who else? Paul?
I'm not finding it super hard. Just didn't have as much time as I needed to finish it up yet.
Okay. All right. Cool. One being easiest for, yeah. So difficult, just been, yeah. I think, Paul, when I did this, maybe I wasn't thinking through the poll. Super hard. Yeah, difficult. I meant to do something like just really easy. But all right, so we have a few that didn't get through it. Super hard, just a bit challenging. Dustin, what did you find just kind of challenging about it?
Mostly I just keep forgetting that it is JavaScript.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a lot of the stuff we learn in the beginning is, you know, not necessarily gone, but I'm forgetting all the tools that we have, so to speak, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
We might have like established that tool set. I just forget most of them now.
And Ryan, what did you find most challenging about it?
I had to go through like 3 or 4 YouTube videos to figure out how to do this.
Okay.
Because none of this, it went from forms to text inputs to depositing money, and
yeah.
I was able to get it to work, but it was a big step up from what we learned, and that's
okay.
fine. It took a lot of extra time on YouTube to figure out how to make this work.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I can see. I mean, from watching the videos, I could see that, you know, forms were definitely covered, right? And capturing that information, passing that data back up to state, or at least parts of that, right? Just the username got passed up. And then you were able to update is logged in. And then all of a sudden, you know, you got to see just some text, right? It was just a little bit of text. There wasn't much else being passed down, just a secondary component. But here it's definitely looks a bit more challenging, right? Having 2 separate components, a checking and a savings account, both of them would require what? What would both of them require to have? I kind of mentioned that as we were talking, like, what's this thing? Where does it live?
The state.
State, right? I mean, checking account needs to know how much it has in the checking account. Savings account needs to know how much it has in the savings account, right? That information could live in the app, or it could just live in checkings or savings, right? Has to live in either or. Definitely state, because we're typing in values here, right? If you're typing in something, we learned that there's an on-change event. That on-change event captures everything you type in, and so we'd have it there as well. So let me just take a look here, see what we have. Just going to take a look at last week's, right? The homework was just doing that. I'm going to spin it up. I don't have the solution right here, so I figured maybe we could spend some time reviewing this, getting down these concepts, and then we can jump into APIs. So let me just spin this thing up here. ls change directory 1202 11k2 homework npm start, right? Ooh. All right, spinning up my server, and here it is, right? Nothing's really there. I mean, I can type in whatever I want, you know, $100. Nothing works. There's nothing actually there, right? It's just text as of right now. So I'm going to take a look and see what this thing had originally. Like, what's its architecture, okay? So I have an app, and I have another component called account, right? Here's account. Now, a lot of the times when you start working with React, what I like to do sometimes is, because React is, you have to think about your React architecture, okay? So I'm just gonna open up a Google Draw so I can kind of draw a little bit. I found that drawing some of this stuff out helps. And so if I wanted to, I could have insert text box, image shape, right? And so this becomes our app component, right? It doesn't need to be that big, okay? And our app component is the parent component, correct? And if I copy and I paste, let me just see, let me copy this thing. Yep, there we go. I'm gonna move this down here. I'm gonna copy, paste again, and I have two. And one of these components now is going to be my checking, right? Checking, and make this a little bigger. Our savings. Did I spell that wrong? Yeah. Savings. Okay. And so our parent app is the thing that connects them, right? So if I want to pass data, I pass data from here to here. I can pass data from here to here. Can I pass, oh, I don't want to do that. Can I pass data between these two? Is that possible? Dustin, what do you think? Can I get data from checking directly into savings? Can I pass between the two of them? Is that possible?
I would guess not with the way we have them set up. So
Okay.
Like they're the same component, but they're like a mirror of it. So they kind of function as two different ones when they're actually in the app.
Sure. This is its own thing. Once you spin off this account-based component and we gave it a name of checking, it becomes its own independent thing, okay? It only communicates with what in this app. You know, if I had savings here and I had something else underneath savings and I had this thing here, whatever it is, right? I'm just extending this app to have something. Maybe this is a type of savings, or I don't know, maybe a total component that just shows you the total, right? I don't need that, right? This thing is not deleting. I don't know why it's not deleting. All right. Can total speak to savings? What do you think? Roderick, you're giving me a, sure, right?
Yeah, I would believe so.
Total can send things up to savings, and then savings can send things up to what? Settings can lift state to where? Up here, right? To the app. And if it's in the app, can the app pass data down in both directions?
Yes.
Yeah, it can be like, all right, you're checking, I'm going to give you something. Your savings, I'm going to give you something. That's an important concept to understand about state. That state can live in these components, but state flows down. It always flows from the top down, okay? Let me just, I don't know why iTunes is jumping up. It always flows top down, okay? You can pass data up, but data needs to be passed down to the components, okay? So usually you have something up here that would have access to it, right? So this app right here will have some sort of state, right? And at this point, state, as we know, is going to be some sort of object. Well, as we create the app, we'll go ahead and give it, you know, whatever data it actually needs, right? So I have this state here, which I can copy, paste, and give to either one of these, because my assumption is that this also needs, oh, I think it's the wrong one. Wanted this, all right? So let me see, I'm gonna just copy this one, copy, paste, right. Move this down here. I could paste it again and move this one over here. The reason why I'm doing this also, breaking this down, is because when you start to build out your project, whatever your project is, last time I taught this class, and I actually started using Google Draw, right? I'm kind of, when I teach in New York, I just use the whiteboard and we capture all the information. So without a whiteboard, I feel kind of at times, hey, what's the substitute for that? What we had was the students draw out their full architecture, planning everything out. What's going to get passed down as props? What things have state? And this really helps you understand everything. It really helps break down the concepts that we're trying to master here in regards to where things would be. I want to try to find the previous drawing. Maybe when we go on break. But so we know that this state should have what? What should checking have as state? What do you think it should have? I mean, what is it responsible for? What do you think?
A balance.
A balance, right? I don't know, right? That seems correct, right? It's going to have a balance, and we'll set the balance initially to be 0, because the last time I checked, if I went to open up a checking account, no one's giving me any money, right? I don't know. Maybe they give you to it. Maybe they don't. I don't know. This one also has a balance of 0. Is there anything that this needs to be aware of as of right now? In the app, you were required for at least something, right? If I went back to the homework, let me see, what was this? So the homework, right? What was it? Account, we have to pass down. Was there anything where you had to log in? I'm just looking to see if there was anything here where you had to like log in. I don't think so, right?
No.
No login.
All right, so there was no login. I thought there may have been a need to do the login. So they just need this. So I'm going to leave state up here. I don't know if it needs the state, quite honestly. It may or may not need state, but if I want to pass data, I think one of the bonuses was to pass data from checkings to savings. I think that was one of the bonuses. Let me see. Bonus, as it stands, our breaks. Letters, don't assume, refactor the common code to handle withdrawal, create a transfer form that can transfer funds from checking to savings, correct? All right, so this is important. If we're doing this, if we're transferring data between two components, and we already know that these two components cannot talk to each other, this would need to have some sort of state there, right? Whatever that is, it would need to know where am I transferring it from and where am I transferring it to. So in the end, this may need to have an understanding of both checking and savings, and it's responsible for like making the transfer between the two, right? Some sort of function that's just like take money out of checking, give it to savings, and then give checking and savings their information. So if we were to implement the bonus, then up here we would include that state, right? I'm gonna get rid of total. I just put total there just as a concept, okay? So as of right now, that's kind of the structure of the app, right? They do need something though. There is something else that this would need. Would it need props? What is it going to get in regards to props? What is it going to get? And props is an object, right? Just like state is an object. What is the checking account getting right now, based on our structure right now, as props? Anyone know?
Withdrawal and deposit.
Withdrawal and deposit. Let's take a look. Just want to see. Well, if we were just to leave it as is, does this thing need to know, is there going to be some text that says this is checking and that's savings? Right? So maybe we need something like a type. I'm just making it up, type. And this one would have checking, would be passed down, right, as props from the parent. Checking, not the best speller. And then this one will also have props, right? Props passed down. And it also would have something that would be type as well, right? Type, you know, is savings, right? Savings. Okay. This curly brace going the wrong way. Boom. There we go. Okay? Just trying to like visualize the thing before I build it. A lot can be said by you visualizing things before you jump into the code. You can figure this out here using the architecture. You can build the thing out. If you have no idea what things get passed in, you're just going to get lost in the confusion of coding. Things aren't working, right? And that can be truly, truly frustrating. Okay? Let's just say if that was our basic app. So I'm going to go back to here. Let's take a look. So once again, nothing really exists. Here is, where is it? Did I start it up? Here's the React app. So let me put this in here so I can just constantly go back to it. Nothing here. So let's go back to and see if we can't fix this. All right. So what's the first thing we need to do? So I have the app and we've already passed down something, or have we? Because this just says account, and it looks like it spins up 2 accounts. But what's the first thing we need to do? Change to prop, right? First thing we have to do is tell this one you're the checking and tell that one you're the savings. How do we do that? What do I do here in order to get that done? What would be the first thing? Paul, ideas. First one's going to be checking. This one's checking. This one's savings. How do I do that? You can call a friend, Paul.
You're going to put the type property in, like you were saying.
Yeah, there you go. Type, because it's a prop, right? And we're calling it type. We can call it whatever we want, right? And if we give it type, it has to equal something, right? What do I do there?
Curly braces and add the name that you were going to.
So we're going to say checking, right? I think that's checking. Okay. Right? So before I do, before I go out of my way to like do this type, I'm going to make sure that the thing works, right? I mean, if we do this, I go here, let's see, I thought it should have refreshed. Didn't do anything yet. So guess I'm not done yet, right? Passing it down. I didn't get any errors, so that's a good thing. If I go back to here, what do I need to do here?
In your H2,
yep.
You have to call that property.
Okay, how do I do that? What do I type here?
You put the curly braces in there, and then you do this dot props, and then whatever your value was, so type. Yeah.
Right? All right, cool. That looks good. Let's take a look. There we go. So that works, right? Easy enough. We're passing down props. And because we only define it in one place, right? Now I know that I can pass down props. I can go back to app and say, all right, well, this kind of syntax works. That's the easiest thing. Let's go here. And now we just do savings, right? Savings. We do that, save it, go back here. Savings and checking, things work great, right? Easy enough. So we get the idea of passing down props. Now for either one of these, right, for either account or savings, we're going to have to capture information, right? Or, I don't know, what were the requirements? Were the requirements to like start them off with 0 and pass some data down? Let me see. All right, props are mutable, right? Use the property of the H2. We did that. Balance property to state, at a balance property to state setting the initial 0 initially, right? In the account component. Cool, let's do that. How do I go in here? I need to add a balance key value pair to state. How do I create that? What am I gonna do? Quincy, what do I do here? Love to get that done. And you're gonna help me.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to phone a friend on this one.
There you go. All right, I love it. Go ahead. Who are you phoning?
I'm gonna go with Mace. He's on the ball this morning.
Mace. Seems like
you need to put a constructor in.
Correct. Constructor. Right? What else needs to be in here?
Super.
Super. Why super?
I don't know.
I love it.
This always says you need super. So
yeah. No. I completely get it. I'm gonna. I finished my last cohort. One of the last cohorts I finished was in December, and I took like a 3-month break, and I was just working on some personal projects, doing some stuff with D3 and some other stuff. So I went on some interviews. A lot of people reached out because I was posting stuff on LinkedIn in regards to the D3 projects that I was working on. It's a data visualization library. I love it. Always going to talk about it. You'll hear me. People reached out to me. I went on interviews, and they were all remote for the most part. One of the first or second interviews, they broke down. They showed me something like this, and they said, can you explain everything that's happening here? Everything that's occurring, can you tell me exactly? So that being said, when something like this happens and you don't truly know the answer of what super is, look it up just so that when you're on the interview and they say like, well, what's the constructor needed for? Why is super? What is that doing? You'll have an understanding. Now, I'll provide the perspective of what super is doing. It's based on this extends. What does extends do? Does anyone have an idea? So extends keyword does what?
It extends the class.
Yeah,
so it's like we did with in JavaScript when you had different classes, you can extend it to something.
Sure. So account is really inheriting functionality from component, right? So extending the class means is the same as account inherits, functionality from component. Right? That's the default React component, right? I don't know what's happening inside the default React component. Like I've never seen what's inside of the thing. I only know I inherit and I use a bunch of functionality, right? I'm sure if I looked inside a React component, it'd be probably a scary place. Probably a ton of stuff. I have no idea what's happening. But just say it extends it. So now that it extends it, this is where super comes into play. Super calls the parent constructor. Okay, whatever the parent constructor is, it calls it, it executes it. It also allows us to pass in parameters or arguments to the parent. So if the parent had a placeholder for like name, we were creating like an animal constructor, right? Or an animal class, we'd probably give it a name and then you spin off a dog class that inherits from animal. And we need a way to get name in there. So I would pass, don't do this, I'm just showing you, I would pass name here, I would pass name here. This name is what's being pulled from the parent component, from whatever this is, all right? We're not doing this right now. I'm just trying to give you perspective. Usually what we do is this. Props are usually the 2 placeholders here, okay? That's almost always how you see it. Sometimes you won't see props. I saw when Ryan was coding, props wasn't there, but if we wanted access inside of this constructor to props, if I wanted access to props, I would need to pass it in. Otherwise, I would never get it, okay? So that's what super's doing, calls the parent constructor, okay? And so it executes the things that are in the parent that it needs, okay? But you were right, Mace. You're on point. You do know. The fundamentals are like, first, how do I make the thing work, right? I don't need to know how an engine works to know to step on the gas to use it. But if you're going to be a mechanic, at some point in time, you have to know how the engine works to improve it, to understand it when it breaks down. So we have this account, and we have props being passed down here, and we know that this is what we're doing, right? And we're going to put what? The whole goal of doing this was to do what? Create a
State.
state, right? This dot state is equal to boom, and we'll just say balance, right? Is 0. I'm just going to make it 0. Okay, it's an object, so sometimes I always get caught doing this. I just, so used to doing semicolons, but we're creating an object, right? So we'd have a comma there for the next thing. Awesome. So there's our balance. Okay. Since I'm here in state and we are going to be capturing data, what else should we kind of consider now that I'm here in state? What's the next thing?
Class name.
Class name as in, all right, so here's the div balance, right? We have to update balance at some point in time, and this is going to pull it from state at some point in time, right? So we'll update this later on, right?
Drop a function in.
Or drop a function in, but think about what we need to capture. I'm just going to go quickly back to here. I'm going to be typing in here, right? What was, in the last lecture, did you actually cover, let me see, that did that? So if I go here and we just take a look at the lecture notes real quick, right? If I did the form, here's the input, and somebody's going to type some stuff in. How do we capture that? Here's the username. What did we do here? This had a placeholder for that, right? For username, because the user typed it in here, and we captured it, right? And so this is a value. So actually, you know what? I think just in hindsight, if we are just doing that, maybe balance would just be enough right here, right? I mean, when they type in an amount, we're going to run some calculation that updates balance anyway. So I think actually here, it wasn't a user prompt or anything. So this actually may be all we need inside a state. I don't think we need anything else if this is it. If this is the balance, we need to show the balance, right? So that goes here, correct? Balance is $0 right now, but we want this to be, we could do this dot state dot balance, and that should give us 0, right? So if I go here, we should still see 0, but if I gave them, I don't know, $10, save it, they update to 10, right? Things immediately update based on what's in here. So this is kind of a dynamic thing. Changing state updates this. Changing state updates this. Okay? So we keep that in mind. If I had some sort of timer right now, like a set interval that added money to balance and updated state every time, boop, 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 this would increment as often as the timer incremented. Okay? So we have it. It's balanced. I'm missing the $sign here, so I guess let me see, if I just put $sign there, is that going to work? Is that going to break it? Yeah, so that's perfect. Perfect what we want. We want data, but of course, it's 0 because it's nothing. We haven't done anything. It's got nothing. What's the next thing we need to do here? Any ideas? We passed it down. Looks pretty good. What do we need to do? We need to enter an amount, right? That's important. So how do we enter the amount here? How are we going to do that? What are maybe the things that we need to do? What are the steps? Any ideas? What do we need to do here? I'm just going to take this, go back here. All right. Any ideas?
We need an event listener.
Okay, an event listener, right? Event listener. Listener. listener, right? I'm a real bad speller. Okay, what kind?
Set state.
Set state isn't necessarily an event listener. It's a method, right? It's an
Clicks.
existing, what?
Clicks.
Click would be, well, let's take a look. I'm just going to take a look
No. Clicks an example.
at the design, right? Well, we do have deposit and withdrawal. So
Like for the button.
yeah. So on click, right, would be one of the events. What's the other event that we need? So I like that. You're on point with the. Let me just put here. We do need an on click, right, for the buttons. But what other one?
On change.
On change, right, and that's for what?
The input.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
That's what I was trying to say.
Right? Now, we could, if we wanted to, based on last week, you did have a form, correct? Is that what you used last week? A form? So if this was a form, and it's clearly not a form, correct? All right? If it was a form, it would have been wrapped in form tags, right? Here, form tags. It's not wrapped in a form, which means we're kind of off the hook with a few things, like we don't need event prevent default, right? Don't need that if it's not a form, because a form refreshes. A form has actions, right? So a form has more stuff that we could use that we're not using right now. We don't need the form. We can always upgrade this thing later on to do it. I think, though, because they are both, maybe we do have things here, like 2 buttons that we're going to have to attach things to. So maybe we'll just do multiple on clicks. I think that'll just suffice right now. I think adding more event listeners just gives us more event listener practice. All right, so we have on click and on change. Awesome. What do those need to do? So once I add them, so once those EVs, I like to just call them EVs, are added, what else? What next? What do we do?
Update state.
Okay. Event listeners are going to call what? What do they do? I click on it. An event listener is like, I don't know. I'm just an event listener. You click on me. Cool. Don't we have to
write a function that updates state?
Exactly. So supporting functions. How about supporting functions that update state? So I'm going to say supporting functions associated. I don't think we need, do we need 2 different ones? Maybe we just need a supporting function, not function. So I'm just going to put here maybe function, maybe functions, right? We do need one for click and change. So yes. So I'll actually say here, supporting functions that are associated with separate events, right? Separate events. Okay, sweet. I think I got what I need to do. Now, the reason why I'm kind of writing it out like this also is the one thing that I have found when students attempt to write or figure out what they're trying to do, they get very frustrated, start writing stuff, stuff isn't working. So just like I did this drawing here to just give me an idea of what I'm trying to do, right? I do the same thing here. This is kind of like, this isn't official pseudocoding, because pseudocoding is a bit more kind of strict in what you're doing. There's certain formats for true pseudocoding. I'm just kind of brain dumping and having kind of fun with myself. Sometimes I ask myself, Joe, what do you got to do? Damn, I don't know. All right, stop. Well, how do you figure this out? Use yourself as a sounding board. When you type out like this also, it gives you a moment to think about it. You can't get frustrated because you're too busy trying to think about what you're typing. So typing requires more concentration. More concentration means you can't let your mind spin out of control and start flipping out and like 1,000 things happening and you don't know where to begin. So this is the reason why I do this. So now that we have this, event listeners, I'm going to go ahead and like, hey, let's add an event listener, right? I'm going to add this event listener. This is going to be what event listener? What type of event listener?
On click.
On click, right? Sweet. So we got an on click and that's going to equal something, right? So we could say what it's going to start with what?
This.
This, always this, right? And this represents what? What do you think this represents again?
That particular button?
This concept, well, we're targeting the button, but the idea of this represents the account constructor class. Like when you say this, I go, hey, what are you? And I'm like, oh, it's this. Oh, this is this component. So I go to the component and go, hey, component, do you have a handle click function? Do you have that thing? Because I'd like to use it. Like I'm calling it. That's what this represents. This is context. Okay. So if I just put here the keyword, this represents context. Maybe I'll do this. Context as in like, where are you? Right? I'm sure you have several rooms in your house. And if I was like, what room are you in? You're like, I'm in this room, right? Wherever that room is. Cool. Somebody else is in another room. They're like, I'm in this room, right? Wherever you are represents this. Every component has its own concept of it's this. This defines the component. And so if the component is looking for anything like handle click, it just has to go there and find the click. That's really all it has to do. Oh, it's click, so I'll find it. Okay? That's why we precede it with this, and you see this dot props looks up to find its state of props. This dot state is its own state. Okay? So now we have that one event listener, right? What do we do now? Let's deal with one thing at a time. This is where I never get carried away and start adding a bunch of stuff. Follow the process through to the very end.
On line 20, between 25, 26, that handle needs an E. I do apologize.
Handle, click, you are correct. Thank you. Sweet. All right. What do we do now?
You create the function.
Yeah, right? Now, I think, I'm just looking how the function was created last week was handle, click, and this was created as an anonymous function, right? It was done like this. I'm going to do it two ways. This is how it was, right? Another way of just creating these functions is just to do really that. I think that's the other way that we can do this. And we'll test this out. This is how I usually do it instead of using the fat arrow. But let's see if there's any difference here. So I'm going to console log now and just say button clicked, right? And the button that we're hitting here is the deposit button. Save it, go back here, go back to our app, go to developer tools. Got React too. Want to always have this open. Here's our props. Let's see what we got. Deposit. Oh, what happened here? Is my checking?
And remove the button functionality.
How's that? Find out that we lost access to the button, right? The button no longer clickable, but the other buttons weren't clickable either, right? I don't know. Not seeing. Oh, here, I'm gonna go to console. Oh yeah, it is. So I'm sorry. I was in the React. I wasn't in the console. So I see now. I click on this button, it works. Click on withdraw, nothing happens. Click on deposit, this works. They both work just as we wanted, right? Just in the wrong place. So now I'm gonna go back here. Let's take a look. Right? If it works there, then it should work where? If we added it. If it works there, the other place this needs to be, yeah, it's right there, right? It needs to be there as well, okay?
So, I mean, is there a reason why we're only doing, because when I was doing this, I did two functions. I did handle deposit click and handle withdraw click. So you're saying you could do it with just one function?
You could do it with one, depending, let me see here, because we do have value, right? So this is an input, and if I grab back the value, what would that return? So let's also try that. So this is clicked. Let's do event.value. I just want to see what's returned back with value. I wonder if this is going to say deposit. If it doesn't say deposit, then we'll go that route. Undefined, yeah. So we're not getting back the value here. There is a way to get back. What my intention was this. If this is an input and it has a value associated with it, can I get back the value that's inside of it? Like if I could get back this name, wouldn't I be able to say, hey, your deposit and your withdrawal? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You might be able to get the name if you do e.target.value.
Ah, that's right. That's right. So here, let's do that. Let's go back here. E.target. Awesome. Here we go. There you go. Deposit, withdraw. Deposit, withdraw. Right? So now, the way you approached it would have been fine, right? Like your idea is like, hey, the one thing that I can guarantee is like, when this button is clicked, I know that that's the function that it calls. And we could have done that, right? But if you also know that you can get something from this thing, you could also do that. I think another thing we could have done is probably said something like ID is equal to, I'm just going to try this, deposit. I just want to see deposit. I want to see if ID works. And instead of doing target, I'm going to do e.target.id. I think I tried this earlier this week and that worked fine. But let me see. Yep, look. So you can also elicit something from an ID. So we have that as a an additional property that we can elicit. Okay.
Cool.
So once again, I do this stuff all the time, but there's times I just overlook it. Like I'm just like, hey, e.value, you know, and I know it's e.target.value, but my brain just is going so fast sometimes as I'm doing this. So if I do overlook something, just by all means, please point it out. We would have figured it out. Cool. So now that we know that we need to do this, so according to that, you know, we could just run some sort of if logic, like if it's withdrawal, do the thing, right? If it's deposit, do the thing. So deposit's always going to be an add. Withdrawal is going to be a thing. So we can always just say if now, run some conditional logic, right? If and just to make things simple, I would say maybe something like this: const value is equal to e.target.value, because I don't really want to keep typing out if e.target value is this. So I want to store it in a variable, and then we can say if value is equal to deposit, right? Deposit, do something, right? Now we know there's only two things here, so if it's not that, we could do the other thing. We don't necessarily need, but if we ever needed this to be in multiple places, maybe there's 3 things that we're running a condition on, then we could have done that. Here, we could have easily just substituted those two. This is actually just a bit more work, but once again, you know, just getting in the use of storing things and then using them later, right? So if deposit is that, do the thing. So I guess the question is, what do the thing represent? What does that mean? I want to do the thing. I don't know. What is do the thing? Right? I think someone mentioned it, right? What is it?
That state.
Right. So we have to set state. That's the thing, right? So, and in a deposit, the thing that we need to do is to add the value to balance, right? This dot state dot balance, correct? Which means if we were down here, the reverse would be remove the value or decrease or subtract the value from this dot state dot balance, right? Those are the two things that we need to do inside of here. Okay, so let's do that, right? So I need to do these two things. So I'm going to do those two things. And so we could say, what can we do here? So we would start with this dot set state, right? Okay, and then this dot set state is that, right? It's an object. Or we pass this dot set state in object, correct? So what we do when we set state, we pass it an object. Yes, Joe, that's exactly what we do, right? There's also the ability to do a callback. Why is that? I think Ryan pointed it out last week that set state could take a moment to run. So if down here I was like, I don't know, console log, you know, this dot state dot balance. If we did this, is there any chance that once I update state and then I console logged state, that there could be a discrepancy? Yes, right? Why is that? Now you're saying yes. I'm just curious. Why?
That's only an example.
All right.
Because that's what Ryan told me. That's all. Because set state is a tool that's being used across or as a means to update state in kind of a systematic fashion. This thing calls set state, so it's in queue. This one calls set state, so it's next in queue, next in queue, next in queue, right? Or queues would go up, no doubt. And we have to do the thing that's in queue first before I get to the next thing. Do the thing, go to the next thing, do the thing, go to the next thing. If at any point in time, and some people have done this, some people mistakenly do this dot state dot balance is equal to, $100. You should never ever do that. You're mutating state directly, circumventing this process flow of like, hey, you want to update state? Well, get in line, because there's like 10 states in front of you that need to be updated before you get updated. Okay, think of it like waiting in line at the movies or something, right? Somebody just comes out of nowhere and like, I'm just going to go to the front of the line and do the thing. You're like, whoa, 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 hey, we're all been waiting, right? By the time you get there, if you're behind me, hey, there might not be any tickets left. That could be something that happens, right? So you always want to set state and understand that when you do set state, that this is a queuing mechanism, that other things in your app might also be setting state. Some things that set state may take time. So there's like a wait for this to happen. Oh, you're done. Go to do this thing in state and just keep this process happening. Okay, that's really important to understand when we're setting state. We're not going to use this callback function, but once again, we could. It's there if we wanted to, right? And the callback would say, after this thing has been successfully done, do the thing, okay? Do whatever it is. So we could do something here like make an API call, because now we have like a whole series of API strings to use that we could then do it, okay? So we are going to update state. So if the value is deposit, we have to do what now? What do I need to do? Well, I have to add the value to this state.balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
So did I grab the value yet? Well, I grabbed it here, right? But where is the true value? Where was it? It's in the input, right? Is that where it was?
Yes.
Okay. This is where we may need to do a few things too, right? This is where, I think, Chrissy, you had mentioned the on change, right?
Right.
Okay, in order to like update balance, I have to know what you typed in. So adding a click event, I still need to know what you did with the previous form, right? So this enter amount here requires the on change, right? So on change is equal to, right? And we always try to always stick with this convention, handle change or handle on change, whatever you do. This is the naming convention that we do. Handlers, event handlers, or we're triggering an event listener, and this is the kind of handler of that event listener. So handle change would do it. And so we would need to create a new method here called, handle change, right? I'm going to pass it the thing. I keep doing it that. Pass it the thing, and then we'll do the thing, right? once again, we'll have to capture the data. What I'm going to do now, though, is, because we've been banging away for the last hour, why don't we take a 10-minute break? If you have any questions, you can post them in the Slack channel or Slack them directly to me, and I'll take a look. We can address them as we build the rest of this out. Cool? Break time? Awesome. All right. It's 10:04, 11:04. Why don't we come back at 11:14, right? 11:14. Okay.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
You're still here, right? So the way I had mine initially was in the state. I created like an amount.
Okay.
And just gave it a string function in there, and then did like the handle change because once the user inputs like a value, it was going. No, I put a string just. So once a user puts in a value, it was taking it as a string, and I then parsed it. So in the handle change function, I take the amount and then change it to a value.
I mean, chances are we're going to follow that kind of process, but I would never put this as a string since it should be a value, right?
Okay.
In the end, if I'm going, these two things should be the things that they represent.
Okay.
If this is amount, it should be the $sign, and these other functions here should be doing the converting to or doing the parsing there, right?
Okay, so regardless, so even if it's, you would still have to parse it regardless of the fact that it's, you put in a value there.
Yeah, because everything you grab from the DOM is string.
Okay.
That's really it. You can't do anything else.
And okay, because I was seeing like examples online where they had like age and they put like the string down. I was kind of confused as to why they were doing that because we kept on getting like a nan in there. But
yeah.
I mean, it works on my end for now, but to the point where you're going to get.
What I'm thinking is you're going to see so many things done out there.
Yeah.
Even just the subtle thing that I did, changing the way the function was written, like the handle change function, handle click function. Ryan wrote it as an anonymous function. I'm writing it out like this. Like there's just different ways to do it. You are going to see so many things done so many ways that you're going to ask yourself, man, which is the right way?
Okay.
And then I don't know. Like if you build a house, obviously a house should have rooms and kitchens, but one kitchen may be enormous and another might be small. And you're like, I don't really know how I should build a house. Do I build it with a big kitchen or a small kitchen?
Makes sense.
However you feel like doing it and it works. Sometimes one way isn't a better performance. It's just a preference on how to write something. That make sense?
Makes sense.
Sweet. Hey, I'm just going to run. I just got to run and go to the bathroom real quick. I'll be back. If you have any more questions, I'll jump back just before, okay?
Bye.
You got it. Excuse me. Awesome. I ate something and went down the wrong pipe. Sweet. Back. Back. One. Cool. Yeah, Ryan, I think that's when I looked through the exit tickets and I was talking to Ryan. It's important on some of the more complicated concepts or the new concepts to kind of really review either labs and or homeworks so everyone's on the same page. I'll tell you, when I was a WDI student back in I graduated January of 2015, February 2015. When I was going, I never got a solution for anything. You were just like, get it done, and if you can't, get it done. You're like, all right. So I was always struggling myself. So I know what you're going. I know what everyone's going through, and I want to kind of get you from A to Z as quickly as possible. And sometimes having the solutions helps you understand what's going on. What I know is that reproducing something is a completely different animal, right? You could have the form thing from last week and, Ryan walked you through it. Maybe you did the assignment during the week or the lab. Come a week later to reproduce the thing, it was a big jump between having seen it once and being able to do it again. So, yeah. What do we got in party time? Anything going on here? Just know. All right. Yeah. Player one meets player two. Love it. All right. So where we had left off was handle click and handle change. So we were on this handle change and we needed to make sure that we grabbed the value, right? So I don't know. I'm going to say like grab the value that was typed in. Grab the user input. It's kind of something else I would probably say, right? User inputted. That's going to be the value. So let's see if we can't console log it. Everything gets baby stepped. I'm always like, hey, this is, I always put comments like this too. This is the input value. So that when I'm looking at all my comments, I forget to remove comments, I know what the comment represents, possibly even where it's coming from. Sometimes I even do this. Handle, change, this is input value. So I know I could find, oh, your handle change. Oh, let me go back to handle change and uncomment because it gets really tedious. So we know for input, if I go here, what do we got? Enter amount, here it is. I need to get back the value from this thing. So we could say, I suppose, e.target.value, right? That was my first instinct the first time. I was like, oh, do that. Right? And that's what e.value was my first instinct. Once we did e.target.value, we got the value of the button, right? It's an input, but now we're typing in stuff. So let's see. Let's make sure this thing works. Go here. I'm going to just kind of squish my screen in a little bit. Go here, right? We should. 10. Oh, yo. I'm feeling like I want to pay myself a lot of money, right? That feels good. Imagine that. Imagine depositing that. I'd be like all over it. Oh, hey, what happened? Well, because this is nothing going on in here, right? So React is screaming at us because it's like this side said you can't do this. That's impossible. We got to do something, right? Because I clicked on something. Now we have the value, right? I'm just going to go back here just to see what this thing was. Let me just enter another amount again, right? 10. This value right here, right? Is that, what data type is that? What's the data type?
Number. Integer.
Well, this is a number.
String. Input.
So this is a string. When I ask data type, I'm talking like number, strings, null, undefined, Boolean, you know, object, array, what kind of thing is it? So it's a string. So if in the end we want to add a string to a thing, to a number, we might run into some sort of like concatenation thing, like, oh, you're looking to concatenate something, right? Because doing something like, I don't know, 10 plus 10, well, that's not what we want. Maybe 10 plus 10, that's definitely not what we want. So in the end, we're going to have to do something, right? What's the thing we have to do?
Question for you.
Oh, yeah.
How do you know that that's a number and not a string? I mean, a string and not a number.
Because, and here's the answer to that question, because everything returned back is always going to be a string.
So you just need to parse it.
Bingo, right? So if I did parse, was it parse int, and said, you know, let me see, if I did this plus 10, I get 20, right? Just keep that in mind. Anything, any true number, any value you type on this screen that is captured is always going to be a string that you need to convert into a number. We just can't get around that. So if I know that that's the thing, right? So we know that that's it. I would probably do something like, I don't know, const value is equal to parse int, you know.
You've already set value up above.
Oh, that's right. And this, the reason why I'm using this also, so change here is used for what? So we did value up here, right? This value is to capture what? The type of button, right? I'm going to put here, value here is the type of button, not the input value. Because there are two different events, right? This is the click event. And if I click on the event, the e.target.value is the button that I clicked on. That's the target. The target of this event was the button. So down here, what do I need to do? As the user's typing stuff out, I should do what here? As they handle change, we should do what? What's the point of the handle change? The last time was to update what?
The balance?
Yeah. So, or, well, we still need to grab that user input, right? So we could do here. We could put something up here, maybe in state. So in our state, do we have anything in state? Oh, I thought we had balance, right? I could have sworn I had balance. I think I might have deleted something. Why don't we put in here, input. I'm going to set this as 0 too. The reason why I'm doing this is because this handle change is going to grab a value, and this handle click is going to take that value and then update our balance, right? So I need some sort of center place to be like, I'm going to make the change here, update it here, and then when you need to update here, just look up here, because this is where the thing will be when you need it. Kind of like passing state down, right? Kind of that idea. You know, if the app needs, if multiple components need access to some value in the application, you put it in the app, and that app passes it down, right? Same concept here. I want to store it up here, and then any of these functions that need access to these values can just go in state and get it. That's really it. So that's what I'm going to do. So handle change, we're going to do something like this dot set. Here, I'm going to do it in here too. Const value is equal to e dot parse int e dot target dot value. Okay. And then we this dot set state, right? All right. Now, let me just take a look. The input here is type, it's placeholder. All right, so we're just gonna do value is value, right? Does that make sense? We did that? I'm just gonna kind of make sure that this works, right? Let's make sure that doing this works. Let's try doing that console log. This is after this runs after set state. And let's console log this dot state dot Is it value? Is that what I had up here? Input. Oh man. This isn't value, this is input. Input. Sorry about that. And this is input. I think though, I might go back and make these two the same, and I'll explain why. Okay, it's an ES6 thing. But let's take a look and say, let's see if I do it, hope I didn't break my app, right? Anytime I make a change, I'm always like, oh my God, am I gonna break my app? 10, oh, I broke it. So what's happening here? Can I read property state of undefined? This dot set state.
You still have it undefined in the above. Go up.
Keep going.
Handle click.
Oh yeah, this is it. Right, you're absolutely right. So let me just comment that out for right now. I thought there was something else I did. Nope. This
I think you missed a holder.
Okay, let's take a look.
Right there. Oh, I guess that works. Never mind.
No, I think that's it. I think this is everything. Is that, I don't know if that's where the error is coming from, right? Is it value, e.tar? So this looks like, because it's parse int, it's coming from here, right? That's where it's coming from. All right. What I think is happening is this. Here we go. Remember I said there's several ways to write some of the code. One of the things that I mentioned was Ryan wrote the handle, would have written the handle click, something like this, is equal to, right? That's how he would have written it, and maybe put in E there, correct? Does anyone know what the subtle difference is? Here's the question. I'm gonna say one of the main differences between a fat arrow and a function, or in this instance, like a method, using a name for something. Anyone have an idea? And this was also an interview question I got. This was like before I got to the techs, the actual IT guys, the developers, I had to go through some sort of recruiter, and the recruiter was asking me questions that I know they didn't even know the answer to, but they asked me this question. Hey, can you explain what a fat arrow is and like why you would use it and what's the difference? I'm not expecting you to know it, but maybe you read an article and you're like, oh, that's what fat arrow does. So I will tell you what fat arrow does, right? Anyone, last minute? No go? All right. Fat arrow loses, or fat arrow cannot hold on to its own context of what? When I mentioned context before, it was in reference to what? What room are you in?
This.
This room, you sure? Yes. This. It loses its context to this. So what I'm going to do is the error that I'm getting right now, let's reproduce this, right, is this. See how it's pointing directly to this? Cannot read property set state of undefined. What would that mean? Like, what does that entail? You see this error, cannot read property of set state of undefined? How would you interpret what that area, what that means? Any ideas?
This hasn't been defined.
What's that?
This hasn't been defined.
Correct, right? Because it's like trying to do something where you thought there was an array there. A lot of the times an error like that comes up is, I see it at the very beginning when students are learning, where they're like, they thought they captured an array. So I could do array.map, right? And we know that array.map could do something like that, right? Just nothing's happening. But what if I did this? What if I'm like, oh, I think I have an array, but I really had a string, right? And so I get something like this. Map is not a function of the thing, which means this thing here is a string and it doesn't have a map method, right? Did you cover map, filter, and reduce for each, right? You did that. It's the same thing here. It's like you're telling me to do set state on what? I don't really know what the hell this thing is. You tell me, because you're telling me to call something I don't really have context of. And so that's where, I believe if we turn this into a fat arrow, we should alleviate that. It's not this way, then there's another way to do it. But I'm going to try this now. Does it work? Yeah, Joe, it works. Awesome. Okay. So I want you to understand that when you do these things, there's different ways to do it. And there's only so much time in the remote classes and any class in general to show you all the different ways. So this is a way. So fat arrow cannot bind to its own context of this. It doesn't have any context of this. So what's the difference between me writing it the way I just wrote it, like this, right, versus this way? What do you think is happening? What do you think happens? So fat arrow can't hold on to this, right? So when someone brings up the question, what is this? So I'm just going to do this. Let's do this. Console log. This is this. Let's see what it says, right? I mean, this is going to error out on us, so maybe I'll comment that out just real quick. What is it? Undefined? What would that tell you? If I had to say, or ask the question, does a function have a context of this? What would be your answer?
Probably no, because it's outside of the function.
Probably no, because it came back as undefined, right? So the concept of this represents context. Just keep that in mind. It's context. Lots of things can have a concept of this, and certain things do not have context of this. This function or this method doesn't have a context of this. It just doesn't know what this is. In order to give it or in order to give it the ability to say, I'm not just this little thing here that I only know what's out here. If I ever see the word this, I will go and ask the parent, oh, hey parent, do you know where this is? And that's where this type of function comes in. This function allows us to do that. Now, another way that you will see the ability to bind to this concept of this. I'm just going to show you a secondary way of doing it. I kind of like this because it's really easy, right? Oh, I'm sorry. I like the way Ryan was doing it because it was easier. But you might see it like this. This dot handle change is equal to this dot handle change dot bind this. Now, I'm not going to go into all of this. I'm going to show you that it works, and we'll kind of go back to the old way of doing it. I'm showing you ways that you might see this done in other apps, right? So let me just do this, and it works, right? I didn't get any errors. Everything works. Oh, you know why? Because I commented this out. So let's make sure that that's available. That's not there. It's not going to work. It works, correct? We have an emphatic yes, Joe. It does work. Your usage of this in context is amazing. So I'm just trying to show you a secondary way that you might see this done. Okay? If something needs to update this, and it's been bound like this, that's one way. If it's been written the way I wrote it like this, it needs to be bound to the constructor class again, to the class itself, okay? Bind is just a method that can run on a function and get passed in something. A lot of the times, instructors don't teach it this way because then it opens the door like, well, what the hell's going on there? What's this bind? What's this thing, right? So I just wanted to show you a secondary way of doing it, okay? Not going to leave it because I kind of want to follow the pattern that Ryan's doing, okay? But that'll be good. You may get that on an interview, like, what's happening in the fat arrow? At least now you can say, well, fat arrow cannot hold on to its own context of this. If this is ever referenced inside of a fat arrow, it always goes up to the parent and being like, hey, what is this? Because I don't really know what this is, okay? Gonna make sure this works. Boom, done. Looks good, right? Set state, import value. Awesome. So we console logged it, and we got, this is state, right? This runs after this set state. Do I have this? This runs after set state, and it's a number, so we now know that it's a number, right? If I add 100 in here, it's 100,000, 10,000, right? So we know that this is working. Awesome. Here's a thing, though. When I said the key that I created was input here, right? So state now has balance and input. And I mentioned, wouldn't it be cool if the key and the value were the same? Now, the value being here, right? This is a variable. That's called value. And this is input. Now, what if I did this? What if I change this just to keep in context what I already put in state? But I only have to change it kind of in one place. So here's input, and I don't want to do this anymore. Watch this magic. It's a little ES6 magic. Input. This should work. That looks kind of crazy, right? It's like, I don't know, it's just one thing. Hopefully this works. Is it working? Charles, does that look like it's working? Right on. Okay, just want to make sure everyone's with me. Does anyone know what's happening here? Has anyone seen that? Like I mentioned that React is ES6 and beyond. They're like the ES10 now. This is kind of like
a variable, right?
What's that?
So it's like a variable. So you just put in variable input.
Yeah, so what it does is it says that there is a key called input, correct? Like in state, there is this key called input, right? But it also says within its context here, right? Within its scope, because this is the scope. The scope of handle change goes from 40 to 50. And so the variables in here know of the other variables and values inside of there. If you call it like this, it then looks in its scope to see if there's a variable that's also called input. If it finds a variable that's called input, then it immediately kind of does its own binding. It's like, well, I'm input. Hey, man, I'm the key, and your input the value. We must have meant to be together. And so they immediately just kind of like, boop, connect and bind together. This is just kind of like shorthand. I forgot the exact ES6 naming convention for this, just off the top of my head. I don't recall what it is, but it is a way of kind of doing like this key value pairing shorthand. All right? So it's pretty cool.
So just to be clear, the variable name, what would you call line 46?
So line 46 is the key.
Okay.
Right? Because it would have been like this, the key and the value.
Okay.
So if the key and the value being here a variable name, right? Because it's the variable that's storing it. If the key and the value are the same name, then all you have to do is do that.
So we just have to make sure that the variable name, the key right there, and what we have up in the constructor all match.
Correct.
Okay.
So,
exactly.
So for example, you could have done the same thing with balance.
So yeah, when we get to balance, we could do it too. So in here on the handle click, right? Perhaps we could do something where like, well, we reset balance. We could do something like const balance, right? Is equal to this dot state dot balance, right? And then later on down here, we could be like balance plus equals yada yada, or balance minus equals yada yada. And then balance becomes the existing balance, right? We took it from state, we did something with it, we added or removed, and then all we have to do is just do this dot state. Right here, all we'd have to do here is do balance, right? But we'd have to make sure that balance up here was already processed. We'd have to do our processing out here, and then we could do this. So it'd have to be this dot state dot balance, and then maybe, I don't know, balance is, depending on what it is. We have to do this inside of these if conditional statements. We'll get to that, okay? That's the idea though, right? That is exactly what we're trying to do. So I feel like at this point in time, we have the amount. I'm just going to make sure this works. I could deposit. I mean, I'm just getting this error because it's like, hey, oh, why do you think I'm getting this thing again? Why do you think?
Is it a fat arrow?
Yeah, it's a fat arrow, remember? This thing here was created the kind of other way that I did it. And so now you're starting to see the errors, right? Now you're starting to like, it's getting intuitive here. If I do 10, I deposit, no errors, nothing happens, like nothing, this is good. So this way of doing it is a solid technique of writing your methods using fat arrows. There's a third way also to do it, but once again, learning more ways to do it isn't going to make you a better developer. But when you see something, I can guarantee you, when you see the third way, you'll be like, all right, this is different than the way I learned, so this must be the way that they're doing it here, right? You'll figure that out. All right, so we go here. What's the thing that we have to do? We've updated state. Awesome. The user's going to click on one of these handle click things, and so this functionality needs to execute, right? So we're going to bring that back into the fold. So if value is deposit, what are we going to do? Balance what? Minus equals what?
This dots.
Input plus balance.
So remember oh yeah. So balance is the state and input is up here, right? So I would also do this. Maybe we would do const input is equal to this dot state dot input. So we get the value, right? That's in input. We don't need this. Well, we do need this because this is telling us whether it's a deposit or it is a withdrawal. This one is our balance. This is the existing balance, right? This is what the user inputs before clicking on submit, right? Whatever button they clicked on, before clicking on button, right? Really clicking on button because there is no submit here, it's just a button. Button, right? Okay. And so here, if this contains the value, and this is the balance that we have, right? All we have to do now is inside this function is say balance minus equals, oh no, they deposited, right? So this is plus equals input. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Right? That should work. This should work. I'm gonna get rid of this call. Actually, you know what? We'll have the callback function here and we'll do the same thing. So what I console logged here, I'll just take that console log, I'll put it in here. Once again, always try to validate your assumptions, okay? At least at this point is, like if you know that this works and this is great. And so this isn't state, this is balance, right? This runs after set state, and I'm gonna say this is balance, and then so the console log. So let's take a look, right? $100 deposit. Oh, so what's happening here? Oh, sorry. So it's saying that balance is read only. Oh, snap. Why is balance read only? Who can tell me the math? What's my flaw in design here? I'm not perfect, people.
Is it the distance set state?
No. Let's take a look at the error message. Balance is read only. It's pointing to line 32 and it's pointing to this balance. So.
Stop balance.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this. I'm going to create a variable called let a is equal to, I don't know, 10. Easy enough. A is now equal to 20.
What?
A is now equal to 30, right? This is a variable. Let A is equal to a value, right?
Mm-hmm.
A can be whatever I want. A could even be a string of 10. Doesn't matter. I can change it as much as I want. What if I said const? Does anyone know what the value of pi is? I always forget. 3 point something?
3.14.
3, look at you go. 3.14. You're just showing up. 3.14.
Mm-hmm.
In math, should pi ever be anything different than that?
No.
No.
Right? That would screw up math, period, right? You'd have some crazy things happen in the universe, the planets, and they would collide, right? So I'm doing this because pi should never be like, well, pi, I don't know. I feel like it should be 3.15. How could that throw off the universe? But it could, right? It could break everything. Math is math. It's very consistent. It's very meticulous.
Yeah.
Assignment
You're getting at that you assigned it a const variable.
Yes. The intent is that I assigned it a const, and it can't be a const if I'm going to redo it later on, right? You just can't do that, okay? So we did it here. We have to do it within this kind of if thing because we don't really know what it is yet. So I got to grab balance first and then mutate it later on. So let's take a look. 10, deposit. Look, this runs after set state, balance, $10, right? Awesome. Deposit. Look, balance is $110. This is sweet, right? Don't you wish you could pay yourself like this? Right? Sometimes I dream of that being the deposit, right? Look, baby, just made $100,000 today. That'd be great. Hoping that dream will come true one day for all of us, not just me. So if I need to subtract something, right, subtract the value, well, we just go here and we do the opposite, right? This was balance plus equals input. This is balance minus equal input. We have to set state again, right? So this whole thing here has got to get run again, right? That looks good. This is balance. We should be able to do the thing. Oh, I don't know why I did that. 10, deposit, 1,000, deposit, 110. We decided to, I don't know, go out for dinner last night. It was really, really, I don't know, really, it's our anniversary, withdraw, boop, and now I'm down, right? Okay, make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Look, not a number. Once you're stuck in this little loop here, that's crazy because now we're stuck. If I ever try to deposit or withdraw and there's nothing in here, I'm going to get kind of screwed up. Now my whole app is all screwed up. Is it? No. Oh, man. If I refresh this, watch this. $10 deposit, $5 withdraw, balance is 5. You're going to give me some more money, $100 deposit, and $5 withdraw. If I forget to type in anything in here and I hit enter, it grabs what's ever there and it's an empty string, and now you're trying to add an empty string to a thing and it breaks it. So this is going to throw me off every time. So you would need some logic to be like, whoa, 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 hey, if this thing is empty, don't do anything, okay? Cool. And so the same would just go to savings, right? Savings account would be the same thing. This is almost identical logic right here. We'd pass this whole thing to savings and it would be almost exactly the same, right? Nothing different here, and these components are really kind of identical in that nature, that they're doing the same thing, right? So they should be, right? Let me see. Savings, I did that. Oh, did we? We do this? Yeah, deposit, here's balance. All right. We'd still need to like have separate checking and savings things, right? Because now, oh no, actually no, this works. They're both they're their own unique components. So if I went back here, if I go back here and I say, here's input and balance, right, in the account, I go back to my drawing here and be like, imbalance and input, right, 0. I do the same thing here. Both of them are going to have balance and input. Okay? I keep these consistent with what they hold. Once again, we decided there was no state here for anything, so it's not a big deal. Maybe here in app, you could have, I don't know, I guess a combination of both accounts. Like, what's the account info for everything kind of thing, instead of having these. Is that cool? How are we feeling about React now?
Bit better.
Feel much better? Okay.
I'm still lost.
Lost is, you know, it's relative. Okay.
Joe, can I see your handle click function?
Sure, right here.
Oh, okay, I see. I hadn't put in the else statement in yet.
Okay.
I see.
What I do see here, though, is an opportunity to leverage a third, I would say a third method if I wanted to. What is repetitive here? What repeats itself in this kind of like between line 29 and line, I don't know, 45? What repeats itself?
The if else statement.
Well, the if else doesn't repeat itself, but inside of the if statement and the else statement, what do you say?
Set state.
Right? I mean, we could have done this because this right here is repetitive, right? Do you want to write repetitive code is the thing. Dry, right? Keep it dry. I probably might have gone and decided to, let me just see up here, maybe up here do something like handle, you know, state or something like that. And we pass in balance, right? Oh, remember, because it's fat arrow. Gotta do the fat arrow. I'll screw it all up. Trust me. Here, we could move this thing, this dot set state, boop, and we could put it in here, right? Handle state, right here. All it needs to do is give it balance and it updates state, right? So all I'd have to do is like, oh, hey, I just want you to do this dot, does it update state? Handle state. Handle state, give it balance. Let's see if that works. Let's just, once again, always do one thing. This is deposit. If that works, we should be good, right? Was checking. Does it work? Look, it works. Deposit 1,000. Look, it works. So I would do something like this. Oh, yeah. Hey, copy. Get rid of this. I don't have to do it twice. Just seems to be redundant that that would be the case. Correct? So there's ways to always look at the code and refactor it to make it more suitable for following the dry concept, you know. Write it once, make it more intuitive, have a single place that I can update something instead of 3 or 4 different places that we could do it. We could probably update this thing and make it a little bit more, you know, maybe a ternary operator, if we could do that kind of thing, right? I don't know. Right? Right, why not? All right, I'm not gonna do that. I'm just leaving it there. We're feeling good about the homework though. A little homework review. I'm only saying that because we're on like 2 hours of homework review. So I want to make sure I kind of answer.
I'm able to add to deposit, but I can't withdraw.
Okie doke. Do you get any errors on withdraw?
No, no errors.
Let me see. This is in the homework. What I'm going to do is let me push what I have up. I'm going to just stop the code. ls git status git add everything. Boop. Git commit homework. This was the bank accounts homework solutions. All right. Boop. Git push. All right. git pull. I have to pull some changes first, and then I'll push it.
I know what I did wrong.
Okay. Okay, git push. I'm pushing up anyway. So everything that we just did right now, then I push it into week 2 homework. All right, here's the account index. And we have everything that we were just at, okay? So if you did struggle with the homework, use this as the reference point. Try to do the bonuses, whatever the bonuses were for the homework, right? We're not going to get into everything because I just won't have time to teach anything else today if we keep doing this. But, you know, refactor the common code, the comment out, code out, handle, withdraw, click, handle. Oh, so it did this with 2 functions, right? I did it, Mace, because you had mentioned you did it with 2, right? Handle, withdraw, handle, deposit, right?
Yeah.
Is that what it asked us to do? Oh, and click. It didn't tell you here the methods, though, right? It didn't say that. It assumed on lines 5 and 6 that you would have done that. Is that the assumption?
I guess.
Because it didn't say to create it. It just says refactor. In order to refactor, I would have had to know how you created it in the first place or given you clear directions to do these 2 things. If you approach it the way I did and never even looked at the bonus, you'd come down here and be like, but I only have 1 function. How do I refactor it? You would have already refactored it, right? To a helper function, okay? And we did 2 helper functions, right? I did handle click is 1 and handle state is a secondary function, right? We can even have a 3rd function that calculates the balance if that's what we want, and it returns it back, right? Or does this where it adds or minuses or whatnot. We could have done that too. So anything, we have a lot of opportunity here to code the hell out of this thing. All right, pushed it up. Do we have any questions? Questions. It's got to be a question. It's got to be like, what did you just do, Joe? What the hell is going on? It's okay. It's a place to learn, man. I'd rather you ask me the questions here than be on an interview and be like, damn, I should have asked Joe the question. All right. We're going to
explain the fat arrow again. So it doesn't hold on to it in its function, but instead refers to its parent. Is that what you said?
It goes up here and it asks the class, like this inside of the app represents class. So if, I'll just put here, if this is referenced inside of account or any instance of account, this is account. Okay? So if this is ever called, it's like, well, what is this? I'd take me ask you, you're in what room? Well, I'm in this room. It's always the same thing. If you're in that room, it's always that room. This in the fat arrow bleeds out of the fat arrow because it can't hold on to any context of this. So anytime a this is asked for, which is some sort of global object, it's like, well, I don't really know what that is. So I'm going to go ask the account class. Hey, account class, what is this? Somebody just asked for this inside of me, and I really don't know what that is. But when we create as a method, not these fat arrows, when I do it the other way, the method itself becomes this self-contained thing. Like it's a more protected space, consider it. Right? It's like I'm protecting everything in here. There is nothing of this inside of here. So if you want this, you better pass me this because there is no this inside of here. And if somebody asks for this, I'm like, this was never created. So I don't know where this is. And that's what happens.
And that's when you bind it, when you're just using the method.
Exactly. So when I did it, the method, I did this, right? So I'll just put a note here. The below binding was used only if the methods were written without fat arrow. They were written without fat arrow. This is what you do. If they were written with fat arrow, then this is what you do, and you don't need this. Okay?
Is there a benefit to using one over the other?
I would say I don't think there's any performance benefit or anything like that. I just think possibly for the sake of writing it with ease, this is an easy way of doing it, right? Now, readability, when you write code, who are you writing the code for? Who do you write code for? You think you're writing it for you?
For your team, so whoever you're collaborating with?
Yeah. So you're writing it for like the team. I don't know what that is, but I almost feel like it's answer time. So you're writing it for the next person who needs to like look at your code and make sense of it, right? You're not going to be on that team forever. You wrote the app and somebody's going to support you on the app later on down the line. When they look at your code, there better be some sort of intuitive nature to this versus things written all over the place at all different times. That being said, when you do this and you bind it like this, at least when I look at your component, I know what is going to be referencing state, right? So if I see this, I'm like, oh, these methods, they're going to reference state at some point in time. So that's just a visual cue, okay? I could look at your component, work from the top down and be like, anything that I see like this must be referencing state. So I could say like, those are probably going to be more important methods, perhaps, because they're going to be the ones targeting state. Right? And in this instance, if we did it the old way, the older way I was mentioning it, I would have had to do this 3 times. This would have been handle state, this would have been handle click, and this one would have been handle state, right? Because we created that, and then we'd have to just change them. And by looking at this, I'd be like, oh, all of them. This person went crazy, just like setting state everywhere. I don't know. But if I need to figure out your app, maybe this is a clue. These are pretty basic apps, right? I mean, this isn't really crazy. When you start running into an app that is like insane with insane amount of components, I'm just going to code sandbox. I'm just going to, if I can find it really quickly, if not, we'll jump in. I had this sandbox from a previous student. So I teach evening JavaScript courses as well. I could have sworn I had one student create this crazy app. The person came into the class with a bit of experience with JavaScript, and they ran with, now look at all these components. See all these folders? Each folder contains a series of components. So if I'm just going to go to maybe, I don't know, favorites. That one's easy. Look at this details view. Look at, it's got its own CSS file. It's got its own JavaScript file, right? It's got another one. All of these components are detail view specific. And so if I go here, this is pretty easy, right? I was just looking for something that may be more complicated. There's a lot of stuff. And so what's going to happen is, looking at the app that we created, pretty basic stuff, right? Not too crazy, but looking at some of these other things, maybe like, I don't know, maybe people, there may be a lot of stuff in here that I have to figure out. And so if I can put it up here and make it more intuitive for the person, even look at this. This person decided to just export default, like do this up here instead of doing it at the bottom, right? Our code in Create React App does it down here. But you might see this same export default assigned directly preceding this class. Like React, there's just a few different ways to do it. I like doing it this way because it breaks everything down. It's more intuitive. But things could be just like that. They could be like this. This would be fine. Wouldn't be any different. The app would work perfectly fine just like that. I'm going to comment these out just so that we know we're not using those. What do we feel? More questions? we're going to be building something else out again, obviously, right? We're going to be building something out where we make an API call, and I introduce a new concept of how do we make the API calls within React. Because you're all familiar with, what's the tool you use to make API calls thus far? What's the name of it?
Ajax.
Ajax, right? And so Ajax is that kind of overall encompassing concept, right? What's the actual implementation that you use? What's the tool?
jQuery.
You've used jQuery in the past, right? So $.ajax or $.get. I don't know if you use .get. Sometimes I use .get when all I got to do is get. You use that, but in React, do we use jQuery? Absolutely not, right? Does anyone know why you don't use jQuery in React?
Because it's mostly JSX.
Okay. I would give you like little partial credit for that. Ding. I would go back here and be like, all right, I'm adding $10 for that answer. I'll deposit $10 for that. Who else? Why do we not use jQuery in React?
Because jQuery is already shorthand JavaScript, and React is just regular JavaScript and HTML and CSS.
Okay, I'll give you another $10.
Because people don't use jQuery anymore.
I'm just gonna keep giving you a bunch of money. All right, here we go. Did withdrawal have? Oh, look at that. That's interesting. Puts a little 70. So there's something called the virtual DOM. I don't know if that was mentioned. Was that mentioned?
Yes, it's in the markup.
Okay. Virtual DOM is there because React, where did React start from? What company created React? Facebook, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Facebook was probably one of the most popular sites of all time, right? Up to that point. The world went lunacy over Facebook. Everybody, my generation older, was like, I've never used a computer, but I'm on Facebook. Every young person was on Facebook. Facebook became this monstrosity, billions of people using it all day long, right? You're on the train, you're in commute, everyone's like this. I was on the Long Island Railroad the other day looking, and everyone was down on their phone, literally everyone. Facebook had this thing like, man, we have so many people hitting this site, we need a way to like increase the performance. And so they created this thing called the virtual DOM, which is a virtual representation of the DOM. And so they have this kind of diffing algorithm that notices the difference between the actual DOM and the virtual DOM, right? What you're trying to do. And it just targets the one tiny thing that you wanted to like update. Just the one thing, boop, that's it. And so React manages this, the ability to update the DOM. jQuery, well, jQuery can update the DOM too, right? You use jQuery all that time to update the DOM. Well, if you use jQuery to update the DOM, then React's like, I don't know what the hell just happened. I know what I knew about before, but something just did something over there, and I'm not really sure what that thing did. And so it loses this ability to manage that virtual DOM. So when React is manipulating the DOM, you let React manipulate the DOM. You do not allow another tool to touch the DOM, okay? Now, I get that a lot when I work with D3. So the D3 material that I work with also wants to manipulate the DOM. D3 is a data visualization library. It wants to create, columns and rows and like lines, and it wants to do that, and that requires manipulating the DOM. But we, in the world of D3, need to create the elements and then tell React to update the element. So D3 says, all right, I used to be able to like create the thing and then update the DOM. Like that was my thing. I did it forever. This React comes along, and now React is telling me, oh, whoa, chief, you create it, and I update it, like that's our relationship now. You don't have access to this thing, because if you do, you're going to throw me off. Everyone loves me. People kind of like you. That's how it works. All right. So jQuery fell into that same boat. Don't touch the DOM. React is the DOM. React is the conduit, the all-seeing, knowing thing of the DOM. That's important to know. Because in the world of React, in the React ecosystem, when people build out libraries now, they have to do it within the context of React. Right? I'm this library that did all this thing as a plain JavaScript library, but in the world of React, I got to like pull in I got to do this and like manipulate myself. So I give control of React. I give control of DOM manipulation to React. Okay, so that's key to know. Virtual DOM is part of that understanding, right? That's kind of what this is too, like this little React thing here. When we do that, right? Hey, this is like the virtual DOM. This is like the virtual thing that's up on the screen, and I can see all things that are kind of being added and existing here, right? Checking and saving have their own thing right now, right? Balance is here. We change it, we see it. Cool. Feeling any more questions? Anything before we jump on? I'll take one or two more questions. We'll take just another quick break, and then we'll jump into doing our lecture for the day. Now, React is cool. I could do this all day. Building stuff on the fly, building it from scratch is super, super fun. So you can see from my excitement, I want to do more. Let's do more. Nothing? Go once. Dustin, nothing. Roderick, nothing. Quincy, nothing. Yashira. My buddy Yashira from the other cohort, nothing. Okay. Cool. So let's take another 10 minutes. Come back and we'll jump in and we'll try to push right through it because we're going to go to lunch at 1:30. So I'm going to jump in and we're just going to keep going. Right?
Actually, quick question. Is this going to be a code along or just a watch?
No, we would. This thing that I was doing, once again, could have been a code along. What we're going to be doing is I'm going to be following the lecture. And from what I see, when you were doing the form last week, was that a code along or was that just Ryan typing?
Code along.
Code along, yeah. So it's going to be a code along, and I'm going to wait. This was the homework, so I was just kind of like, some of you did it already, some of you didn't. Maybe the way you did it was different than the way that I did it. So I was just kind of showing you and using it as an opportunity to elicit additional information and highlight certain concepts. But the next one will be a code along. We'll be walking through the whole thing together. Okay, so at that point in time, I need everyone on the same page. I'll post some code that we're doing, but I don't want to have to stop so often for, typos and things. So if I post code, if you do it, awesome. If it doesn't work, paste the code that I gave. And if it doesn't work, then stop me. But we'll have a process of trying to do this efficiently with our time. Cool? Cool, Joe. I'd love to go to break now, too. Awesome.
Great.
12:12. Come back at 12:22. 12:22. was just updating our little drawing earlier. You know what I might do is do the banking. All right. Share it. See if I copy it. Link. I'm going to add it here. This is our homework. This is it. So the account, maybe the apps. All right. I'm just taking the link that we created that represented our app. I'll just put it here in the app. I'll push this up. This was the Google Draw. Google Draw app architecture. There you go. Just putting the link there. I will add that. Status. Boop. Huh. I added everything. Get. Add. Right, get. I'm going to do get status. I just want to make sure I added it all. There we go. Get. Commit. Homework updates. Boop. Get push. There we go. All right. Looks good. Nothing. Awesome. I pushed it up. This will be up there. Let me just make sure I'm good. I'm going to close this thing. I don't want to have it open. And we go to the homework. Refresh this. We should have Interact.js right here. Here's a link to the Google Draw if you wanted to take a look at it. I would just suggest as you break down apps, we use this as part of it. And that, I think Code Sandbox. Sweet. So we super excited about React. That's exactly what we are. And with that excitement, let's get into the lecture. So today we're going to be doing using fetch to make API calls. Fetch is in a ES6 global function. Allows us to make API calls. So it's our new Ajax, $.Ajax. That's what this is going to represent. Replace $Ajax with this new tool. We'll store our results in state. We've been doing that. And then we're going to do or learn this thing here. Okay? The new life cycle methods. React has this other part of it, which you're kind of aware of because I started us off by, this whole session by talking about what happens when you update state. It triggers, I think Chrissy answered that, right? Chrissy, updating state triggers what?
Render.
There you go, a re-render, right? And so render, because it is required, is a lifecycle method. It is one of the methods that governs the life cycle process of a component, okay? There's things like, did component mount? Component did mount. Did component unmount? And so we can use these lifecycle methods to kind of manage the flow within our component, okay? So that's what we're going for. And our README. So, that was the README. Now, let me go into the lecture notes. All right. Oh, let me Slack it out. I didn't Slack it out. So let me jump the gun. I feel like I'm doing more here. Start with classroom. Boom. Oh, I did Slack it out earlier, though, right? Let's see. I don't want to do it twice. Oh, I just did the Zoom. Got it. Only gave you what you needed. Boom. All right. Sorry, just slacked the lecture. I mean, you know where it is. I just making it easier for you to find where it is. Okay. So if you haven't already done a git pull and get all the stuff, get all the stuff. All right, so I'm going to go into week 12, day 03. Here, I'm going to go into instructor examples. I created a folder so that I can do whatever I need to do in instructor examples. So, that's where I'm going to be. You download it, go wherever it is that you go. Okay, so React with API calls. What's our objectives here? To make an API call, to retrieve a bunch of crimes. I don't know, that seems kind of morbid. I don't write the lecture, but it seems like crimes is the thing that we're going to be pulling. Lots of data on crimes. Could be Pokemon, could be weather, could be deck of cards, could be anything. If I went around, I'd probably change it to something a bit more happy. I'd rather pull in a bunch of rainbows, right? Smiley faces or something, I don't know. Then we'll render the crimes out as a list. Okay, so we're going to get the data, and then we have to render it. Then we'll create functionality in which we can delete the crimes. Awesome, so we're adding functionality, right? We're adding things by like getting them in a fetch call and like, hey, we got a bunch of stuff. Before we had no stuff, now we have stuff. It's one concept of adding, and then we'll delete a crime by adding a button and maybe removing it from an existing array of things, I suppose, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create, let me just do this, move this down a little bit, right? Zoom out here. I'm in instructor examples, that's where I'm going to be, and I am going to create the React app. So create React app, React Ajax. That's what it's called. We know it's crimes. I think I'm just going to add crimes. I'm going to add crimes for myself, so I know when I look at this what I'm doing. Boom. Just going to do it. You're also doing it, right? So this is the great code along. So I'm just extending it to say crimes. Okay, there you go. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready to rock and roll. Create React app. I'm calling it React app, React Ajax crimes. You can stick to the lecture. I truly don't think it'll phase anyone. I'm gonna give you a moment. When you're done, click on the thumbs up.
Joe, I have a question.
Yeah, what's up?
I always get this error when I run a app through React, and what I usually end up doing is bypassing the whole check, just so it can start.
Got it. We'd have to take a look. I know sometimes there's like an ESLint check that happens.
The ESLint check. I just end up bypassing the ESLint check from suggestions.
Yeah, I had to deal with that maybe like last week, even on my own machine. I forgot the solution, but I can look up that solution for you. You can find that.
Okay, Ryan gave me a solution the first time, it worked, but when I do all the other ones, it doesn't work. So I just bypass it.
Okay, but you're in a state where it is working right now, though, right?
It works when I bypass the test. I don't let it do the test at all.
Okay, that's fine. What happened with me was that I must have installed or run npinit at like my desktop folder. And you don't do that. Like you don't run npm init at your desktop level. And what it was doing, it was looking up the hierarchy tree all the way to my desktop and like, hey, ESLint is being pulled from this top level package, and like its version control is different than what you have. Could be something like that. I only knew that because when I read the error, it told me at some point in time where it was looking for this info, and then I went up there and I realized I had run npm init someplace I should not. So you'd have to look at look at the errors. I mean, you can, once again, copy paste the whole error. Maybe shoot it to me and I can take a look.
Okay.
Sound good? So we only got 7. Is that it? How many people we got today? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 9. There we go. Remember, that thumbs up is going to be key. I don't want to get too far ahead. All right. So, all right. I'm going to close this. I don't really need this. Things we are going to need are going to be things like, hey, import, React and component and export, creating all the structures, right? When we create our components. So I'm going to get out of here. I am in my app.js, and boom, got everything here, right? I'm going to spin this up and just kind of make sure it works, because obviously, no point in trying. I'm going to ls. Hey, I see React Ajax crimes folder because it's created this structure. So I'm going to change directories into the React Ajax crimes folder. ls looks like everything. If I do npm start, it should start this thing up. Okay. If I had another application running on port 3000, I would just get a message stating, hey, you have another app on port 3000. Do you want to do this other thing, like start this app on another port? Just say yes. Easy peasy. Okay. Sweet. Looks good. Everyone go. There's the app.
I'm getting an error.
Oh, what's the error?
When I hit npm start, I got a bunch of errors.
Okay, try doing an npm install.
Okay.
Sometimes when I run this, like run create React app, it's downloading a bunch of stuff. Sometimes all the stuff just doesn't get downloaded and I have to run an npm install again to get it down. We'll run that and then let's see.
So I did npm install and it was fine, and then I did npm start and same errors. It's package.json is the first error. What is that?
Share your screen, Chrissy, so I can, let me stop sharing mine. Share yours so I can see if we can resolve this quickly. So there's the error. Let me see.
Do we usually have to do the sudo when we create React app?
I don't have to do it. I mean, if you saw that the folder structure is there.
Yeah, it's definitely here.
Did you change the directory after you made the app?
Oh, did you go into the directory?
Oh.
Do an ls right there. Do an ls.
Yeah, it says class code along, that's the folder that I made.
Okay, but just do an ls. Type an ls. Yeah. Well.
Do I need to get into this folder?
Oh yeah, that's the folder. You got to get into the React one.
Sorry, guys.
No, it's all right. Now spin it up. npm start. There you go.
Cool. Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Happens. All right. So let's go back to what we're doing here. So, well, we're gonna leave our component as our container component. So that's gonna be our parent component, right? And we're gonna want to add or set up our state, right? So I'm gonna choose something like crimes as a key, and obviously if I'm pulling in crimes, plural, an array of objects, right? Objects that contain information about each individual crime. So inside of the app, we'll put a constructor here, constructor, right? and super. And we'll just say crime this dot state is equal to crimes as an empty array. Right? I just get used to putting the comma here because if I ever put something else, sometimes I forget to put the comma there. Now, that doesn't change anything, right? Our app shouldn't be broken. Oh, here we go. What happened? Can I not do something right here? Constructor, space. That's odd, right? Let me see. Unexpected token.
Function.
What did I do wrong here? That's really odd.
Is it the props inside the brackets?
Online
Parentheses?
I'm going to try, but I don't think props is it, right? Constructor.
Online 5.
Oh, this is a function. Oh, I see. Oh, I see what's happening here. So I'm going to just test this out, but I can already see what happened. What I want you to do is take a look here at this construct, this function.
Should be called a class, right?
Yeah, right? Is that something you had to do when working out with Ryan?
Yeah.
All right. What React has done in the latest version of React is turn class-based components into functional components. So you can't have this constructor in this fashion. There's other ways about doing it, but we can't do it like this. We have to say class app and then extends. All right, I'm going to get rid of these parens there. Extends. And when it extends, we need to extend component, right? But if I do component like this, it would error also because it doesn't know where this thing is coming from, right? If I just take a quick look at our previous app. So I'm just going to pull up our previous one. See how class app extends component. Here, import React, and then we have component in curly braces from React. So this is object destructuring, and it's pulling out this key value pair from React. It's yanking out component and everything and storing it in a variable. So that's where it is. The other thing I want to mention between them is this. I'm just going to split it off. This render method. Render is one of those required methods. And in this, it just does return. There is no render method. So we have to refactor that too. So let's just take a moment to do this also. Component, right? That's the first thing. These two are tied together. This and this, right? So make sure that that's updated. Boom. Right? So we write this structure for the app. Okay. And then the last thing would be to add a render method. And we're going to put everything in return inside of it. Okay? I'm just going to tab this over. I'm going to make sure it works. Okay. So this is what I put there. Wrapped return in the render. And then I closed it on line 31. Three things, right? Just updated this to include component. In our class, we extend the component. And we change it from function, class, and then we add render here. Now, React has made some changes, obviously, and we'd love to incorporate all those changes. But we still have a lot of lecture material, a lot of labs that are built this way. That's why we're doing it this way. We get the chance to like update everything, all the material. We want to keep things consistent, okay? So make sure your app is still running. If it's running like this, everything is golden, right? Nothing should, all these few subtle changes that you did make are legit. They're all good, right? So what we want to do now, and this is where we're going to get into, let's make an API call, right? So here, we're going to make an API. Now, there's a lot of code in here, right? There's quite a bit of code in here. So I'm going to kind of walk us, we're going to do this little code. I'm going to move this over here, and we'll just kind of go through the code together as part of the code log, instead of me going line by line, right? So first, what we're going to do is create a method that makes the call. So, you know, create a method that makes the API. I'm going to put here fetch call, right? Okay. So let's do that. And it's called, the method is called get crimes. Okay. And because get crimes is going to update state, we are going to, I'm going to create it like this. And you can follow me. The lecture added something there. I'm doing it like this for a reason so that you can understand later on why I go back and do what I'll do later. So get crimes. We want to do something, right? Now, the thing that we want to do is to make a call to get data, right? So make the API call using fetch. That's what we want to do. Fetch is this tool, comes pre-built with ES6, okay? Fetch comes, came with ES6. It's a new introduction. It was meant for developers to make API calls without doing it the old way. There's an old way of doing it where you have to make an XHR request, this long, obscure way of doing it. Nobody wanted to do it that way. Fetch alleviated that. So what we're going to do is this. I'm going to say fetch, and I'm going to fetch something. Now I'm going to slack out the URL we're going to be using. Right? Here you go. This is crimes data. Okay? I'm just going to put that in there. Now, putting it in there isn't alone enough to do anything, right? I mean, I fetch the data. The question is, I want to do something with the data, right? I need to do something with the data. So let's do this. Fetch returns, so all new concept for you. Fetch returns a promise object. Now, I don't know if anyone's heard of promises or ES6 promises. A promise deals with JavaScript's asynchronicity in how it runs its code. And asynchronous meaning there's certain code when running JavaScript that doesn't return anything, even though it might take a while to return something. And you have a sequence of lines of code, 1, 2, and 3. And if 2 takes a really long time to run, and 3 is dependent upon line 2, well, that might be a problem because JavaScript, by default, is not waiting for line 2 to fully complete. And so when it comes to line 3, it errors out because it's like, hey, I'm looking for the thing, thing's not there. And that's because JavaScript isn't synchronous. It's not running steps 1, 2, and 3 necessarily, although it is. Step 2 took too long to run, and so JavaScript's like, hey, I ran it, but no one told me to wait for it. So I moved on to the next one. So fetch returns what's called a promise. So if I promise that you do something, what's the expectation? Hey, I promise you if you do this thing, what's the rest of my sentence? Like, if you're promising me something, don't I owe you something? Like, isn't that a promise? I mean, that's every promise I ever made. You do the thing for me, and then I'll do the thing for you, right? That's the relationship of a promise. If you don't do the thing, then no one's going to believe your promises anymore, right? Same concept here. If I get this data and that data is successful, guess what I'm going to do? Then I'm going to do something for you. Well, what are you going to do for me? All right. Well, I'm going to give you the response of the data, but I first have to convert it into JSON. Okay. Now, this whole res.json concept, right? This whole thing right here has to deal with, let me just do this real quick. Here. Okay, I'm gonna pull this over here. I just want to show you what's happening. You may not know of this thing, so I just kind of want to like expose you to it. We're not gonna really work with it, but if I have a server and that server sends me data over the web, or sends me JSON. How does that server package the JSON to send it to me? How does it do it? Well, take a look at the URL. What is it? What's JSON? Does anyone know what JSON is? You did APIs in Unit 1, right? You're like API professionals now.
It's a form that data comes in, like the way it's compiled.
Okay, so JSON is an object, right? Let's agree to that. An object that has some requirements, right? Beyond that of a normal object, right? It still needs to behave how an object behaves, but it has a little something else that it's needed, right? What's the other thing about this? If I take this URL and I paste it into my browser right here, it's gonna go here. Hey, let me get the JSON. Look, I got data, right? Well, I'm waiting for this. I got data. Easy enough, right? What's unique about this versus me doing something like let obj is equal to, oh, here we go. Let me go up here. ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. What's the difference between those two?
One is auto-generated and uniqueness.
Okay, one is auto-generated, cool, right? I asked for something and it packaged it and it gave it to me. What other things can you tell me that are different between the way this is written and the way that I wrote this? Okay, well, let me extend this object again.
Array.
Well, it's in an array, but I'm just focusing on the object. So if I extend this to be like, I don't know, case number, right? So d dot case, my case number isn't a good one. What if I do date? I'm going to do this other one. I'm just looking for something really simple. ICR is equal to, I don't know, 10. So my object now has these. What's that?
One is a string.
Yes. You see the keys are written as strings, and everything else except for like Booleans, right? Almost everything else is a string also, right? Strings, strings, strings. Every key value pair is a string. Even these numbers are strings, right? That is JSON. One of the requirements of JSON is that all of the data must have double quotes around everything, all key value pairs, except obviously for like these Booleans, right? That's one of the requirements for JSON, okay? So I'll just put here that JSON requires that almost all the keys, well, requires that all keys, I'm going to put it that all keys have double quotes. Also, that most of the values have double quotes, right? Because we did see that the Booleans did not have it, right? So that's one of the differences. Now, I'm bringing that up because I'm also kind of referencing this JSON thing here. Now, the reason why I bring that up is this. Strings, right? I'm trying to emphasize strings. And this is what I mean. I have this object, right? I want to send it to you. I'm the big server dude now. I'm the big server man. You love this object of ID 123, and you want it, and I would like to send it to you over this crazy internet space. I can't really just send it as an object. Not in an object like this. I have to do something like this. JSON.stringify obj. What just happened?
You turn the object into string?
Yeah, I did exactly what you see here, where there's quotes, 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 except for the number. It didn't hit the number, but it did almost everything in quotes. If there were strings there, it would have put those in numbers in quotes too. And it put quotes around the object, right? Now that it did this, so let's just say I was like, hey, let's new object is equal to that, and now hey, look, new obj, look, I got it. Now, what if I want the ID from obj? How do I do that? How do I get the ID, this ID? How do I grab it?
New object dot ID.
Oh, snap. Ouch. Well, that's going to hurt our whole app, right? I really wanted it. I thought that was going to work. I don't know, maybe a bracket notation? I don't know, maybe a ID? And so I'm like, man, everything I learned is just going to the wind, right? Well, that's because it's a string. It's not an object. I just can't use dot notation, bracket notation, because it's a string of text, which means if there was a way to stringify this thing, right, go in one direction, would it make assumption that there's a way to go in the other direction, right? So I say let's rev object, where I'll reverse it, equal to new obj, I'm sorry, JSON.parse new obj, rev obj. Is it an object again? Can I do exactly what Christy suggested and do ID now? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Servers, when they give you or you make the request to get their JSON data, they stringify. They turn it into a string. It's a much more efficient way of sending data. When you, the client, gets said data, you need to parse it, turn it back into a string. Now, when you were doing, $.Ajax and you were doing this and whatever, you did that then, right? Ajax did it for you. jQuery is like, hey, that's the way things usually work on the web, right? Send it to me, and so I'm going to go out of my way and I'll parse it for you because I'm Ajax, right? Because I'm jQuery, and jQuery wants to do more and write less, right? Makes a good assumption, right? But when we do that here, fetch did not do that for us. So with fetch, the first then must parse the data back into, parse the data from string to whatever it was. I'll put here its data type. Because what you saw here was that the data that was returned also was an array, correct? That's an array of data. That data would also have been in quotes too. So whatever it is, if it's an object, it's got to like parse it back into an object. If it's an array, it needs to parse it back into an array. So that's the need to do this, okay? Fetch just has this one little overhead. It's a pain in the ass. There's another tool that we could use to get through that. We're gonna use fetch for right now. The second then, all right, the second then, gives you access or provides the data. I'm going to do then, I'm going to call it data, and I'm going to console log, you know, this is data, I'm going to do data. Awesome. How do I run this get crimes thing? I mean, I could add a button or something, right? And click on the button. Oh, does anybody have an idea? I just want to test this. I'm going to make sure my app didn't break. Where's my app? My app around here? What happened to my app? Oh, I think I lost my app. Can I not spin it up? Let me spin it up then. Thought I did. Here. I don't know where it is. I'm just going to stop it and restart it because I don't really know what happened to my app. Maybe I changed it. All right, here we go. So it's over here, hiding. All right, I'm running it. Looks good. How do I get access to that data?
Through the console.
Okay, well, I'm right here. I'm looking at the console. Look.
React
Data. What's that?
Nothing.
What do you think? Who thinks here? I'm like, you're all thinking very, very hard. But think to yourself, I just wrote a function method, whatever you want to call it. What do you do with a function method, whatever you call it? How do you get it to run?
By calling it.
By calling it. Where's the one place that you think in this app we could call it right now without adding buttons or anything?
Just log it.
Okay, well, it is logging it here. Where do I call get crimes?
I want to say in Winder.
I like that. That's the only other place, right? The one guarantee about this app is that render always runs once, right? That's why we see data on the screen, right? If I refresh this app, that must mean that render ran because I see stuff on the screen, okay? And that's important. If it render runs, then I can test this thing and just do something like this. I don't know, this dot get crimes, run it. Just run it. Let's see, and look, man, I got a bunch of crimes. Hope this doesn't get like morbid. Bad crimes, lots of bad stuff. All right, strong arm, no weapon. All right, bunch of stuff. Robbery. Okay, but we got a bunch of stuff. Coordinates. Maybe we can Google map this thing later. All right, everyone get that? Got data? Awesome. I got the data, and what would we do with the data? Now that we got the data, I'm walking you down this road because first and foremost, it's the wrong road to walk, but I need to do this so you can see why this way won't work, okay? I have state here, and I want to update state with my crimes, right? Okay, so if I go here and I update state, where would I update state in get crimes? Where do we do that? I'm going to make it easy for you. Where would I do that? Paul, where do you think I would do that?
You want to update state? Well, you got it right there and then in the data.
There you go. All right. Because we have access to the data, right?
Yep.
So let's do this. This dot set state. Okay, crimes, right? Crimes is data. right? Wouldn't that make sense? If there's an array, we're just resetting it to an array. Oh my God, look at this thing. How, this thing just doesn't stop going. Do you see what's happening?
You did pick Chicago.
What's that?
I said you did pick Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Could have picked a safer city.
I could have picked, exactly. Wouldn't change the fact that this thing is perpetually running right now. I don't know if anyone could tell. Look, watch, I'm going to stop it. Look, I'm going to clear my console. What the? Clear my, what? Every time I clear my console, how is it possible that I keep getting data? I'm clearing my console. What does that mean? If I clear my console, and I'm still getting stuff. What do you think that means? How many times should I have seen it? This many times?
So it sounds like it's refreshing, right?
Sounds like it's doing some sort of recursion or something, right? Recursion where it's like running, and it doesn't stop. Why does it not stop? What's the process flow here?
Because it defaults to refreshing the page.
Yes, because updating state causes what? A re-render. Re-rendering here calls a function that updates state. That causes a re-render. The re-render calls the function that updates state that causes the re-render. That updates state, right? You see this perpetual craziness that's happening here. This is part of the whole React lifecycle. I'm going to stop this.
So just to paraphrase, it's stuck in a cycle until you stop it.
It's stuck in a perpetual make the call, get the data, update, make the call render, update state. Like it's perpetual. Now this is the reason. So I'm going to show you. I don't think we have an image of it, but React lifecycle. And these are React lifecycles. Let me open this up. An image of the React lifecycles right here. See this? And there's different versions because, once again, React had changed. So there is a site that we could go to. I forgot the site. Maybe even on the React site. I could go here and change the version because React just keeps changing. Okay? And so there's a mounting lifecycle, an updating lifecycle, and an unmounting. So when we mount, we load the constructor, which you've created before, right? It calls this method, this default method that it has, called getDerivedStateFromProps. It calls it in both updating and mounting. And then in mounting, it calls render. In updating, it calls render, right? And then there's a few, like this gets snapshot before update. That's an updating thing. React updates the DOM and the reference. And look at the last one. Component did mount. Component did update. And component will unmount. Where could we position or call this function, this getCrimes function, so that it only runs one time when the component is mounted? Where from this list could we do that?
The constructor?
Okay, the constructor, maybe the constructor is one place, right? Because it is only run once. Okay. What's the other thing that's only run one time? Just follow that line down.
The update.
We're in this right here, the mount.
Component.
Did mount, right? Component did mount. When a component mounts for the first time, it gives you an opportunity to run something and do something. and it only runs or does this thing. It only runs this method one time, the whole life cycle of the component. If the component is mounted, the very first time, it's like, here's your one shot, people. You want to run something like make a data call? Here it is. Do it here. Do it here. If you do anything in here that causes state to update, then you're going to keep going through this cycle, updating, 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 and keep going through it. It's a perpetual cycle. So what we want to do, I'm just going to kind of collapse this a little bit, is do this. Add a new life cycle method called components did mount, which runs only one time when the component is initially mounted. That's it. Never runs ever again. If you refresh the page, sure it's going to run because the component is remounting, right? Page refresh says load up everything that I had there, and so it goes through the whole process again, right? So here, what we want to do is in our component did mount, we run get crimes. This dot get crimes. Boom. Right? That should work. And what I'm going to do here is instead of in render, instead of calling get crimes here, I am going to just console log. Here we go. I'm going to console log. This is state. This dot state dot crimes. Okay? What I want you to see is two things. What you're going to see is that state will be empty the first time. State will have crimes the second time. Let's try this out. Back to the React app. I'm going to clear this out. You can already see it happening there. Let me clear this out. I'm going to rerun it. Look. Now, the second one is coming because I console logged data inside of the function. So just to keep things as simplistic as possible, I'm no longer going to console log here because I don't want to confuse you. Now, do you see what's happening? The first time this is run, there's nothing in state because render doesn't have. Render's like, cool, I'll ask state if there's anything in crimes, and there's nothing in crimes because render runs and state, which lives up here, is empty. It's got nothing. When component did mount runs, it updates state here, bloop, updating state goes into this cycle, the updating cycle. By updating sets, by using set state, look at this. Set state will then go through all of these things, hitting render ultimately, right? I'm hitting render. Hitting render does the thing. Shows me the new value inside of state. Does that make sense? We can test this out also by doing something like, I could say, without calling crimes or anything, just once again, I really want you to just understand what's happening. I could say console log, this is component did mount, right? Here I'll do, I'm not going to console log this just yet. Just want to try something else to get your head wrapped around this. Console.log, this is render. Okay? Watch what happens. Go back here. I'm going to run this. This is render. This is component did mount, correct? And if I go back here, this is render. This is component did mount. Easy enough, right? If I go here again, just to, once again, emphasize what's happening here, if I was to if we updated state now, if in here I did do this, and I had another component called, we're not going to use this today. I'm just showing you component did update. See this one? Component did update. If I add component did component did update, right? I'm just going to copy this, put this here, component did update. And let's take a look and see what happens. The sequence of events. Render runs once, this thing runs, which updates state, render runs again, component did update runs. Watch what happens. I'm going to refresh it. Do you see this process? Oh, I don't think my Mac to Imager is working. Mac to Imager. Oh, here we go. Let me do one more time. Nope. Somehow my Mac to Imager is not working. Here we go. All right. Boom. Does this make sense what's happening in regards to this life cycle? It's important to know. Because it makes sense that this life cycle right here, I'm just going to put the snapshot that I just took right here, right? Why that happened? The first render is this render. Component did mount is this. Component did mount calls set state. So now we moved into this updating set state, which causes a re-render, which is this re-render, and then component did update happens here. Component did update is going to run as many times as the component is updated, right? Updating a component means I set state. I'm always kind of doing things with state or getting new data. It's just, that's the way my app works. If my app was just static and nothing happened, it'd be a pretty boring app, right? There'd be nothing enticing about that. This is exciting that I can do this, okay? Move this over here. So that's kind of where we're going with this. We're not going to be using component did update. Once again, I'm just conveying to you it is part of the life cycle methods. The life cycle method we are focused in on is component did mount, because component did mount, I'm going to put here another note, I'm going to do CDM, just for component did mount so I can abbreviate, is almost always, it's not even almost always, is always where you make an initial API call. Initial being the key word. If my app needs to have data to show somebody about crimes, well, then I got to make the call to get the crimes, right? If I have a to-do list, then I got to go to the database and get my to-dos and put it onto the screen. If the user updates to-dos that require going to the database, well, I have to make API calls there too, right? So I may do that using custom functions also, custom methods. And they will make fetch calls to like send data, post data. But this only runs one time when the component is mounted. It'll never run again, okay? That's important to know. I'm feeling good about life cycles? Any questions you might have lingering about life cycles?
Can you scroll up just a little bit where you have the fetch on tool?
Sure, right here. Once again, the fetch that I'm setting up for us right now is very slimmed down version from what's inside of the lecture notes now. I did this in this most basic fashion to convey how to use fetch just in general, right? You're being introduced to the fetch. The way it's in the lecture added a few extra things to it that would just, to me, complicate it. If you don't know how to work with it like this, adding those additional things would just kind of complicate things. And I really wanted to just take a moment back to explain how a component did mount is a life cycle method. It is these methods, okay? Once again, I know if I went here and we went to the actual React site, right? So I did images, but if I went all, it would take me to React state and life cycles. And you can go here and they should have in here some sort of table, I think maybe. No, they don't have a diagram of them. So yeah, I thought they would have something, but they don't. They do cover component will unmount, did mount. So these things are part of React, will unmount, right? So there's the documentation on React is like, whew, the best documentation you're gonna find on something that's free, okay? Outside of maybe jQuery, which has been around forever, okay?
I see your get crimes method.
Which one?
Get crimes.
Get crimes, right here. I'm also gonna do this. I am going to commit what I have, okay? Git status, git add, git commit, added, introduced life cycle methods. Okay. I pushed up what I have. Okay, just in case, you know, you got maybe a little lost here. Let me get out of this responsive here. And structure examples, source, app.js. You should have everything that I did thus far. So if there's any point where yours isn't working, you can just come here and give it a reference because we are coming on 119. We'll be going to lunch soon. So I want to make sure you have everything. I'll make another push once we do the other thing, okay? I just want to make sure we're feeling good about where we make these fetch calls, where they happen, okay? So now that we know get crimes has updated, we know component did do this, we can see our crimes. This is render, and I can now say this dot state dot crimes, and we should see the crimes, right? If I run this again, oh, what happened? Did I not do this? There we go. Here we go. First render nothing, as it should be, because state wasn't called yet. Component did mount, calls state. Render runs again. Now it has something in state, and then component did update because the component was updated. And now we have a bunch of things that we should be able to see on the screen, correct? Correct, Joe? Yeah, sounds great. It's great. All right. So let's, now that we have this, right? We have this data in this fashion, okay? We need to do something with this data, and I want to show the data on the screen, right? Where are we going to show the data? Well, down here, right? I mean, React has all of this. I don't really care for this. Like, I don't need this fancy icon spinning around. I don't need all this information here. All that stuff is mumbo jumbo. I don't need it. So what I could do is, you know, get rid of, I don't know, all of that. Maybe I just have a div with a class name of app, and I should have nothing there. There should be absolutely nothing there, right? If I wanted to output some data here, we could, once again, just say, put in H4 and say crimes. If I do that, I should see crimes, right? That's all. Just got rid of a bunch of junk, put crimes there, and that's what we have. If we wanted to now, if we wanted to kind of output this data, how would we do that? Any ideas? You know, I'm just going to.
Stringify?
What's that?
Would we use the stringify?
No, we don't really need to do anything with stringify because that's what this ran the parse. So now we actually have data here, right? We got all this data in an array. So maybe I'll phrase it another way. If you have an array of data and you want to access everything inside of the array of data, what do you
a for loop.
A for loop?
Yep.
For loop on an array of data. Okay, could do that, right? Could do something like this. I'm not going to do a for loop, Paul, because for loops, when you enter the world of React,
For each is easier.
For each is easier. And even better than that, if I want the looping construct to return something, what's the other method?
Dot map.
Dot map. So if I said let crimes equal to this dot state dot crimes, right? Okay. Dot map. Now I'm going to put here two things. Now this is kind of how I write it. The first position is what? In map, we're going to use two things. Two arguments. What's the first argument? What is argument A and what is argument B? What do they represent? In a map, argument A represents what, and argument B represents what? Okay. Let's go down here. I'm going to create an array of, you know, oh, here we go. I want to do it with letters. A, B, boom. Here's an array. R, array of two things, R dot map, A and B, and I am going to console log A and B. What do I get? What does A represent and what does B represent?
Oh, the index?
Yeah, 0 and 1.
Okay. 0 and 1 are indicative of what here?
The index?
Okay. Which one of these is the index?
A is the index in the array. B is the actual array.
Okay. It's the opposite. A is the actual element in the array, and B is its index. Now, you know, in hindsight, I think maybe I shouldn't have just used A and B for this because that threw you off. So if I just said, you know, C and D, let me just do this because I really want not to, oh, you can't do it. I already did that. So maybe I can say R is equal to.
Would it be easier to put index in A or
R? It would be. Probably. Ruining my whole thing too much.
Sorry.
Had a thing going on here. All right. I'm only kidding. All right, a map. Let me do it run one more time. All right. Only because I want to stay focused on what A and B are. These are parameters now, right? So A represents the element because when I console log A, it represents the actual element in the loop at that time, and 0 represents its index. D represents the element at that time in the loop, and 1 represents its index position, right? Make sense? Usually when I do when I do a map, I don't use A and B. I usually use something like this, D and I. D stands for the data. I stands for the index, right? That's just kind of how I write it. So then I would do D and I, and we get the same thing, right? D is for data, I is for index. You could call it element and index. You could call it pickles and bananas. Doesn't matter what you want to call it. It doesn't change the fact that the first thing is always the data element and I is always the index element. Always, 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 never changes. So when I come back here and I ask, what is A and B now? We know that A is the data element and B is the index of that position. Okay? And in here, I'm going to return. Let's return maybe a bunch of, I don't know, I had an H4, so maybe an H5. H5, and it would have D, because that represents the element. No? I mean, this is JSX. So JSX is like, cool, I'll do this. I'll do this all day. Give you as many as you want. And then here, if we were to call this thing, if I was just to say, I think if I just did crimes here, let me see if this will work. Oh no, it's breaking. Objects are not valid as React children. Found objects with keys, so it's screaming at us. This should have returned back an array of things. That's what it should have returned back. So I'm just going to do this. Console log, this is crimes after map. And I'm going to see, I'm going to get rid of this here because that's breaking it right now. I'm going to do this, refresh this, and I get nothing. Oh, here we go. Crimes after map. Here we go. Right? These are H5s, so it did it. Oh, you know what happened the first time? I think I know what happened. The first time we do this, is there anything in state at the time we do this? State is empty, right?
It's empty at first.
Yeah, so it's probably like, hey, there's nothing in there, and you want me to like do this thing, and so I can't do the thing. I think that's the reason why, because we should be able to, this returns an array of things, and we should have been able to do this over here. So I may have to run some conditional logic to fix that, okay? Now what I'm gonna do, because we're coming up on 1:30, I'm gonna add what we have here. So get status, right? So I got what we have. We edit app, git add, git commit. Okay, looping over data using map. Git push. I'll push up what I have. We're going to pick this up after lunch. Okay, we'll go to lunch. When we come back, I will add the rest of the data. We'll loop through. We're going to create another component. I'm kind of like walking piecemeal through the lecture. I find it a hard time just to like go step by step, every step of the way, especially when I have so many other things that I want to show you. So there's times where the lecture doesn't contain the additional information. If that's the case, everything that's in the lecture will get covered, and I will go back and do it. One of the things we have not done yet in the lecture was to create another component to show the crimes list. Okay, I didn't create that yet. Once again, I wanted to show you the data, getting the data. What do we do with the data? We're going to come back. We're going to do that also. We're going to go back and refactor our get crimes to use this new async and await. I don't know, did you cover async and await?
Yes.
Oh, you do, so you already knew it. Oh, okay, that was my bad. I didn't know if you knew it, so I was going to show you the fetch way of doing it and then refactor it doing it this way. Since you already know async and await, you'll see why we're doing it in this fashion, okay? But the first thing we'll do is we'll refactor it into the async await, and then we can move on. Okay. If you have any questions, once again, reach out. I'm just going to step away for a little bit just to have lunch, but I'll take a look when I come back, and then we can pick up at 2:30, right? Great. I will see you then. Yeah.